back to you.
All right.
Instead of having to memorize it.
Okay, you guys are live, go ahead.
Okay, we are swearing in our new officer, Mark Strickland.
Trustee.
Trustee, sorry. I, Mark Strickland,
I, Mark Strickland,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
of America,
of America,
the state of Colorado,
the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances and resolutions of the town of Wiggins,
and the ordinances and resolutions of the town of Wiggins,
and faithfully perform the duties
and faithfully perform the duties
of the office of trustee
of the office of trustee
upon which I am about to enter.
upon I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mark, afterwards we'll both sign it and I'll stamp it.
Yeah, so you go ahead and have a seat at the table. And grab yourself there.
Welcome aboard. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome aboard, Mark.
Thank you, Paul.
Is that clock off again?
Just reset them both, but they seem to be running a little slow. They're a minute behind. That way it seems like you get out earlier.
Okay.
When it strikes midnight, you know, it won't be so bad.
Yeah, it better not strike midnight. That's all I gotta say.
What's our longest here? One? We've done what,
Somewhere on one or
12,
so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we had some
I
more.
think we had one that go into
12:50.
one once, didn't we?
Yeah, that's not what I want.
If you do that again, you're gonna have to raise your salaries.
Yeah.
I don't know, $36, sir.
Push it.
Well, they're in no position to complain.
Okay. By my watch, it's 7 o'clock. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Wiggins regular board meeting will come to order November 13th, 2019. Time is now 7 o'clock. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Here.
Charles Roll,
Here.
Jeff Palmer is absent, Bruce Miller is absent, Pat Musgrave is absent, Mark Strickland,
Here.
Mayor McLeon.
Here.
And Mayor, just to let you know that Trustee Miller did call in and he had to be out of town today. And Trustee Musgrave called in and I believe she had a family emergency.
Emergency.
And Mr. Palmer called and said he would not be able to make it today.
Okay. All right, well, we have a quorum, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Skipping over item number 4. Let's go to number 5, town staff reports, please. Paul?
Okay. Sergeant Ferguson, let me start with you.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. I'm keeping my report pretty short for tonight, since in January I'll have a more detailed of the total calls, total arrests, and everything like that for the year. I'm going to start off because I'm sure some of you have some questions about the incident at the school yesterday. I did put a press release on our Facebook page, emailed it out to all of the other agencies in the county. So basically, in a nutshell, what happened was Superintendent Kerr received a tip from a parent whose son was in a group chat on Facebook. A picture was sent by another student with a gun inside of a backpack, saying something along the lines of, "This is going to happen tomorrow." So Trent immediately informed me. Of course, at 7:30 in the morning, we don't have that many cops on in the county. Admin and everything were not on duty yet for the most part, so we had a total of 4 officers that responded. Myself, Officer Erickson, and 2 deputies from the sheriff's office. As soon as Mr. Harris from the school seen the student arrive in the parking lot, He was immediately brought over to me. He was searched. His vehicle was searched. His backpack was searched. Once we made sure that there was no weapon involved, we brought him inside. Parents were contacted. He was questioned. It was the intention of a joke, and in his words, to be cool. So the school right now is handling that. It's still under investigation, but at this time there has not been any charges filed. Do you guys have any questions on that?
Just thank you for acting really fast on it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Aside from that, our total calls for service this year, which Mark, I'm sure you've seen a couple meetings, but our calls for service are everything that we do. So if we do extra patrol, if we get a dispatch call, if we get a return phone call, literally everything we do, we get a call for service for. So right now at the end of October, we were at 2,348. Last year at that time, we were at 2,215. So we are up quite a bit from last year. And then Paul wanted me to mention a few trainings that we've attended here recently. All 3 officers went through an 8-hour active shooter course, which was put on by the Brush Police Department. We spent all day in the high school. We also had Parks and Wildlife with us, and then some officers from Brush taught it as well as their chief. So that was basically response, how to deal with an active shooter situation if we're a single officer, because usually there's only one of us on at a time. Building searches, things like that, a little bit of medical, if we needed to render aid or anything. And then Officer Bannock attended the FTO conference, which him and I both attended last year. It's the Field Training Officer Conference, so they have different classes, discussions about how you can make your FTO unit better, some different tools that we can use. And then all day today and most of yesterday, I attended an evidence management training. So basically just how to deal with our evidence, legalities, liabilities, things like that, organization. So, you guys have any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just related to that, just so the board knows, I don't think we've ever announced it, but earlier this year, we did build a larger, more secure evidence room for the town. And so part of that process will be moving some of that stuff in and securing it here in the near future from its old location.
Okay.
Pat?
Okay, I'd like to start off with, every year we do support our local kids that raise animals and all that. I have a picture of the young lady, a couple of thank you cards, and our ribbon for being a purchaser, which we like to support our local kids every year.
And what animal was it for the public?
We got a goat.
Got to go.
We got a goat. It's a pretty goat. While you guys are passing that around, I would like to announce something. I will read it so that I don't get nervous, because I'm a little nervous at the moment. Dear Paul, Mayor and Trustees, and everyone in attendance and everyone that's attending online, after much thought and family discussion, I have decided it is time for me to retire. I would like my last day to be January 3rd, 2020. During these next few months, as we know time goes by very quickly, my goal is to update the processes of the town clerk/treasurer standard operating procedures. I believe this will help in training a replacement. Also, I would like to suggest the board look into splitting the town clerk and town treasurer position into 2 separate positions, town clerk and town treasurer, not combined. There is more than enough work to keep one person busy. I will be available for volunteer work and help plan events such as the 4th of July and Christmas celebrations. I believe in the town of Wiggins and would like to stay involved and watch it grow. I look forward to my next adventure in retirement, which I'm going into photography, and my husband and I are doing a lot of traveling. So, respectfully me. But while I have the floor, I would like to say, I know that there's been a lot of conflicts in this town, but in this office, we are a united front. We are a family. We take care of each other. Paul has been a great mentor and supervisor, a supporter. He does what he is asked by this board to do and performs his duties better than anyone probably that I've worked under. And I've been in quite a few municipalities over my life. And I just want you all to know that we really, truly appreciate everything that he's done. Some things have been hard for him because, it's something he's required to do. And, but he does it gracefully. And I think sometimes he's misunderstood. But in here we're family. And we take care of each other. And he takes care of us. He takes care of this staff very, very well. And he believes in this town. And I am very proud to have worked underneath him and have learned from him as well. Thank you, Paul.
You make me cry over it.
I'm going to make me cry.
And board, I just truly am very thankful for Pat's service to this town, her dedication. She has gone above and beyond anything she's been asked, both with her time and her hours and her commitment to the town. She walked into something that was a very hard position to fill. There was no standard operating procedures. She didn't know what needed to be done on a lot of things, and she just dived right into it, took it on. And throughout her tenure here, I kept raising the bar on her and pushing her, and every time she met or exceeded those goals, and that's a very rare quality in a person. So you are going to be missed.
Thank you.
It is like losing a part of our family, but I know you're going to be around, and again, thank you so much for your service and dedication to this town.
Thank you very much. And I will be part of Wiggins stakeholders as well. So I'm excited about that. To continue on. That's all I have to report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pat.
So Mayor and Trustees, just a couple updates on Public Works. Just to let you know, right now we have started our annual sewer cleaning and jetting and cammering service that we have contracted out. They are working on I guess it would be considered the southeast part of town, Sally and Becky Street and 3rd and along that area, and are going to be working through that part of the town. If you recall, when we did the contract, we did a 5-year contract that basically broke the town out into 5 parts, and so we'll be working through that. So Public Works has been, locating manholes and assisting with that, with the camera inspections as well. Also, Public Works was able to finish out most of the items we have left on our trail grant. So they were putting the final signs up that we had, planting a few more trees, so you'll see some improvements out there. If you haven't been down toward the 3rd Street drainage area that has historically become Lake Wiggins, there is hope in sight. So through that grant process, we were able to have the contractor put in a drainage pit, basically, where the water is going to drain into. We are still waiting for the pumps to be delivered. They were back ordered. There's a little bit curb and gutter that collects that, and we were also able to asphalt 2-3 streets through there, part of 3rd and Sally and Suzanne as a part of that. So we were able to get that, and that part of that was to help with some of the erosion control to keep the sand from running in there. So if you haven't driven down there, take a look at that, and hopefully we'll have that finished soon. Also, we've already started working on setting up Christmas, and actually this weekend, myself and some of the staff are going to be working on starting to put the wreaths up and lighting town up. We're kind of 3 weeks away from our Christmas celebration, is that right? So it's around the corner. And the other big thing that was accomplished was, as you recall, the board, we had a $130,000 donation to build a new playground over in the future Kiowa Park area, the 65 acres that the town still owns over there. So we were able to finish up the playground part of that. There's still little touch-up things that need to be taken care of. There's a couple thousand bags of mulch that have been installed, the sidewalks have been done, the playground's open, and it's been a hit with kids. And we also had our Frisbee golf. We have a 12-hole Frisbee golf course that's going to go in around the new Mayor Forche Trail that's going to be dedicated probably in the spring. And so we'll hopefully get that up by spring, the Frisbee golf, and have another neat attraction or fun thing for families to do in town. As far as my TA reports, just kind of going back to 3rd Street, Appreciate Hope has been finishing up all the paperwork related to the grant. As you guys recall, part of that, I believe about $140,000 of that was paid with for grant money. She's finishing up the paperwork to spend another $91,600 request, which would be the final draw that will be reimbursed to the town. So as you get to the bills, 100,000 of that being paid out in the bills is related to that Third Street project. Also with that as well, Hope is finishing up the trail grant paperwork for that to go in. There's $9,500 left to draw on that grant, and really close to closing that out. And that really is, I don't know if the board and the citizens really appreciate the amount of work that's involved in keeping up with the paperwork from state and federal agencies. It's mind-boggling, and nothing's easy to read as you go through it. So I appreciate the work she has dedicated into really understanding that and working with the state and to help figure out how to get those things in. Just an update, there's another phase of construction being done over at Kiowa Park. The developers have got all the water and the sewer lines in the next phase and most of the sidewalks are in, and they'll probably be paving here in the next week or two out there, and those lots should be available for the developer sale to the builders sometime in December. Also want to just kind of give you some updates on where we're at with our budget for the year. I am very pleased to announce to the board that every single category that we have, our general budget, our water and sewer budget, the revenues that we have projected and budget for the 2019 year, we have met every one of them at this point in time, and we still have 2 months of the year left. So for general budget, we've had $948,000 budgeted. We have brought in $953,000 in revenue for the year. So that's about 5,000 over for where we're at right now. On the expenditure side in general, as I just mentioned, we had $948,000 budget. We've only spent $652 of that for the year, so we have $300,000 under budget on the expenditures right now. In the water fund, we budgeted $1.2 million. And year to date, we're at $1.4 million, so $200,000 excess at the moment. We budgeted $1.2 million in expenditures, and we've spent $1.1 million in expenditures, so we're still $100,000 under budget. But that also includes the $250,000 payment that you'll see in the bill pay that goes to Central that wasn't originally put in the budget. So we may have to do a budget amendment for the water section if that goes over, but I think we're going to be okay. In the sewer department, we budgeted $518,000, and our revenues are at $613,000, so we're about $100,000, just a little less than $100,000 over on revenues. We've budgeted the $500,000 again on expenditures, and we've only spent $260,000 so far this year on expenditures, so we're $240,000 under budget on expenditures. Within the general budget of that $948,000, the town also allocated $140,000 to be appropriated from leftover funds from the previous year to make the budget balance. We will not need to appropriate those funds because we are balanced without that appropriation. So $140,000 is basically savings for the town to roll over into next year or put it behind if it wants to. With that said, something to make note of, it's been a very active year for construction in the town, both houses and commercials, and a lot of remodels going on. Looking through the budget, as you look through these numbers, why are we doing so well? And new construction has accounted for $1,540,000 in revenues in the total budget, so that's general, water, and sewer combined. So that's a combination of the use tax that was passed, where the builders pay taxes on their materials, combination of water tap fees that have been paid, sewer tap fees that have been paid, and building permits collected at $1,540,000 year to date. And that's all I have for my TA reports. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions, Mark? Okay. Alrighty, thank you. Let's go on down to the Mayor and Trustee Committee reports. I have nothing to report at this time.
Or, I guess for the Christmas committee, we're still looking for some volunteers, aren't we?
Yes. If anybody is wanting volunteers, we have some spots to fill, from just assisting setting up, from helping out serving cookies and hot chocolate and things along that line. So we're most definitely looking for volunteers, and we're going to be decorating Saturday, probably about 9:30, 10 o'clock. We're going to start decorating the houses and stuff, so anybody's welcome to come out and help with that if you want to get in the spirit. early. But if you've been to any major department store, it's been Christmas since August, and so we're just trying to catch up. And yeah, if you're interested in specifically volunteering for something, please call the office and ask for Pat, and she'll be able to put you down on something. So,
Okay.
thank you, Chris.
Alrighty, anything else? Okay, let's go on down to section 2, public discussion. The Board of Trustees welcomes you and thanks you for your time. If you wish to address the Board of Trustees about a specific concern or to comment on an item, this is the only time set on the agenda for you to do so. We ask that you be respectful and courteous when addressing the board. When you are recognized, please step up to the microphone up here in the front. State your name and your address. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The timer's behind me here. The board may not respond to your comments this evening. Rather, they may take your comments and suggestions under advisement and provide direction to the appropriate member of town staff for follow-up. With that said, the mic is open.
My name is Anna Brooks, 407 High Street. I have just 2 brief issues. Number 1 is I'd like the board to consider looking at resolution 2-04 in the area of nepotism and see if we can extend that to cover board members as well, because there's no reason for one family to have multiple votes on this board. Number 2, there is an atmosphere of intimidation, bullying, fear, and anger in Wiggins right now, and we're all very aware of it. But I'm laying that at your doorstep, because when you can't walk into a board meeting and be treated with respect, with courtesy, with diplomacy, then that's where it starts, because people will stop coming in here. When you're a trustee 24/7. I've had to take action. And I'm embarrassed. And I am not going to specify this person's name because they are not here and they have not received this letter yet, but I'm giving you copies because you need to be aware. It's the board's responsibility to maintain decorum, not Paul's. You need to take action right away. You need to expect apologies when people are rude and nasty and humiliating to our guests, to our citizens, and to other board members. That's the end of my comments.
Mayor, would you mind passing, is there an extra copy you can pass to Melinda and myself? Michelle?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
My name is Gerald Johnson. I live at 211 Dixon Street, and I'm very concerned about the safety of our school kids up here. I go up and pick up my great-grandkids and let them off at the school up there. There isn't one day that I go up there that there isn't construction trucks going out south that don't run through there running at least 40 miles an hour. That's a 15-mile speed zone over there. Sometimes a town vehicle will go through there running about the same speed. And I don't think that should be right, especially from a town employee. I think our kids are the most important thing in this town. And I think that we should take a little bit better care of watching the speed down that street, watching the U-turns in and out of there, and they do that every single day that I'm there. And I think we better watch our kids a little better. I think they should catch all them cars that's running that fast down that street and let everybody in this town know that when there's somebody in that street, you stop. There's 2 crosswalks up there. Everybody crosses between the crosswalks, which I don't blame them. You can't walk half a block in the cold and half a block back to get your kid to the school. But at the same time, there should be somebody there making sure that them cars are not running 40 mile an hour and 50 mile an hour down that street. So I think it's up to you guys to stop that. And I think in a town letter or something, warning people there's going to be tickets for speeding down that street or whatever, and have somebody there giving tickets for speeding down that street. I don't want one of my great grandkids in a cemetery. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And sir, sir, 1 second before you step down? Sir?
Sir.
I just want to clarify the area, so it's around 200 Dixon, so around 3rd and Dixon is where we're discussing?
Where I live?
Well, where you're seeing the most problems.
No, in front of the school.
Okay, so you're talking on
In
Main,
that whole block
on Main Street?
in front of that school, and there's kids that come between them cars. They'll get out of the cars. They'll park on the side. They'll jump out of the car and head across the street.
Okay, so you're referencing Main Street in front of the school
The
area?
street in front of the school.
Okay, perfect, thank you, sir.
So,
Okay.
We'll let our law enforcement step it up
so we're
there.
looking between 4th and 5th then? Is that,
Yeah,
Probably 3rd and 5th,
there's a
3rd and
sign-
5th.
There's a
Third through
sign that
fifth?
there's no U-turns on that whole street,
okay.
but I see it every day. And I see, especially our town people shouldn't go through there at that speed.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Is this open to trustee as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask, there was a question in a previous meeting by Mr. Durwood about the water bill pay system, the express pay. I just wanted to ask what the status was on that, if we were working towards that.
Sure, yeah, I mean, we're making some steps to it. It's not gonna be a quick process, because we are gonna have to go through a trial process. So, Pat, this last couple of weeks, I've made contact with our accounting software to see what that would cost. And it's obviously gonna be several $1,000s to set up, and so we gotta figure out how that software will communicate with our bank in order to have it. So, we are aware of it, we're working on it. It won't be the fastest thing in the world to set up, like I mentioned at the meeting. It's gonna take some time to get there, but yeah, we have been addressing that as much as we can with our time. We've just been really limited on time staff-wise. We've been short-staffed between sick leave and some vacation stuff. It's the end of the year, so a lot of staff are using their vacation so they don't lose it. So that's been, for instance, Pat's been the only one, taking the front desk in her position, because our one of our persons was out today. So, but yes,
I just thought maybe something like this might alleviate some of the workload for them, so that it kind of streamlines for the residents and the paying customers, and also for the staff to not have to do as much work for being able to streamline the system. So I just thought I'd see where we're at on that.
Yeah, I would agree. There's just a few more internal steps we gotta look. The town doesn't work off a server, and there's some issues because we have multiple computers and they're independent. And how do we coordinate that? And so there's just a lot of things. As what we don't want to do is turn it on, operate it, and it flops because we don't have the staff time to deal with that. So we're going to take our time and research it and work through these things with each of the entities. So when it does come online, it actually works. We don't want to have the Obamacare thing happen, where everybody signed up and it all went down. And so, we want to make sure it's working through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, mic is still open. All right, nobody else? Let's go ahead and move on to Section 3, approval of the consent agenda. Before we move on, I just want you to be aware that we will take this matter up a little bit later.
Oh, I don't expect you to do it.
So, I just don't want you to think that that we're not gonna do anything. Okay, so, thank
I
you.
appreciate you even looking at it. Thank you.
All right, approval of the consent agenda. This is the minutes from the September 10th, 11th, and 18th, 2019 meeting, and approval of the accounts payable in the amount of $594,615.57.
I move that we approve the consent agenda. Do I need to read the motion?
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval.
Yes.
Charles Rule.
Yes.
Jeff Palmer is absent. Bruce Miller is absent. Pat Musgrave absent. Mark Strickland.
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Consent agenda is hereby approved. Okay. Moving on to section 4 of the public hearing. This is for the Thomas.
That's correct, Mayor. The Thomas.
That's right, it's been moved. I apologize.
That's correct. However, I will need you to open the hearing. And once the open is hearing, someone will need to make a motion to continue the hearing
Okay.
to the December 11th, 2019 meeting.
All right. No script?
You can
Well-
just open the meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll go ahead and open up this public hearing for the Thomas Farm subdivision amendment to PD and plat.
Mayor, I move that this item be moved to the December 11th, 2019 meeting.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we move this item of the Thomas Farm subdivision amendment to the PD and plat to the December 11th, 2019 meeting. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval.
Yes.
Charles Rule.
Yes.
Do I need to go through all the three that are absent each time?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mark Strickland
Yes.
and Mayor McLeon.
Yes. The Thomas Farm subdivision amendment to PD and plat is hereby moved to the December 11th meeting. Okay, discussion items. Section 5. Final review on the draft 2020 budget.
Okay, so Mayor and Trustees, as you know, we've had multiple workshops over the budget and meetings over the budget. Our clerk, Pat Lintel, has entered the budget into our accounting software, Cassell, and so that is in your packet. I'm just going to briefly go over the highlights, and I have a few requests I'm going to bring for you. Then I'm going to ask if there's any other changes that the board wants to make to that, because at this point now we would actually pull it into a formal budget with the year-to-dates and everything that's required under the statutes, and prepare the resolutions and the graph budgets and put into a book. So we just want to make sure we have a final copy ready to go. So with that said, just some highlights of the budget. We have a general budget of $895,862, a water enterprise budget of $1,756,622, a sewer enterprise budget of $642,398, a 1% sales tax budget of $130,000, and a CT fund budget of $9,800. Also, just backing up a little bit when I gave the report on the budget, the other thing I did want to mention to the board, the town's total cash position, which relates to the budget, so you'll be making some decision, is just a little bit over $3 million now that we have in cash. So our total 2020 budget is now set at $3,434,682. Some additional highlights of the budget: it fully funds all departments and all required governmental activities that we're required to perform under statute. We have $90,000 in this year budget allocated to street repairs for this year, so we can do some more asphalt or curb and gutter and sidewalks in some of the other parts of town. It funds our agreement with Central Water for our pro rata share of the pipeline, which was unanimously approved by the board. It funds replacement of the sewer line under the railroad track, conditional to us getting a matching grant from DOLA for that project. And if you recall that we have a metal sewer line goes under the railroad track, which is oxidizing and shrinking yearly on us, and that desperately needs to be replaced. It also does provide cost of living increase for employees. I'll kind of pause there because that's one of my requests I want to bring before the board. Right now where we're at on our salary right now, currently we have a 3% increase. However, the base salaries that we have at our employees are drastically under, we've been talking about this at multiple board meetings, are drastically under any sort of market rate. And we are losing a lot of employees, just not because of stuff going on in town with the temperament, but a lot of it has to do with pay. And every employee has discussed how pay is an issue here. I did an informal survey of all of the public works employees and all the office employees, and every single one of them either has or will be applying for a job in 6 months, and pay is one of the largest factors. And we've already have some that are going to be moving on. A lot of the jobs that we have take anywhere from 6 months to a year to train. Our office positions, for example, are just anywhere from $1 to $2 over minimum wage for what next year is. And for instance, our utility billing clerk, it's taken Pat well over a year to train her to get her up to date on being able to perform that job without basically her assistance. Public Works is working in the mid-30s, which is well below any cities in the surrounding area, and they also have CDLs for basically hard labor for what they do, and for having CDLs, and also, you know, they're certified in training Class D operators, and among a lot of their other certification. With that, this year that we've been able, through the work of the town staff, we've been able to save the town the allocation of the $140,000. I am formally asking the board that it will allocate another $55,000 in the budget to go towards salaries, and not equally across to all positions, because there are some positions that desperately need more help than the others. And you know, I mentioned some of the office staff that are only $1 or $2 over minimum wage for really a qualified expertise position. And you know, for example, some of the surrounding small towns, they're advertising the same position as a starting salary that's anywhere $3 to $4 more an hour for the same position of what our staff is moving for. So with that, that is one request I would like the board to consider to make a amendment to the budget. And the second one I would like to bring for the board is currently under Colorado statutes, under Governmental Immunity Act, if the town has a sewer backup or a water main break, for the most part, the town has no liability or responsibility to the homeowner. For instance, if the sewer backs up and their toilets back up, or if a water line breaks and things wash down, that's covered under the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act. CIRSA is now offering some insurance to cover that, where it's about $2,400 a year. It will provide $5,000 per incident for each house that would suffer, or other property. Doesn't necessarily be a house. You know, you have a water line break under a car, could go sideways on you, and again, that still would not be anything that the person could get from us. So with that said, about $2,400 additional money that we can put will go between the water and the sewer budget, and that'll give $5,000 per incident with up to a $20,000 maximum for that. So I think that might be money well spent, just more so just as a protection to the town, just because we do have a lot of old infrastructure that we know, has some risk of things happening. So those are my last two requests to finish up the budget.
So my question is that adjustment, would that be for all town employees, including the police department?
Yeah, so every department person, I mean, every department you look at is under. Some are just grossly way under. On average, when you look at comparable positions, which we have the spreadsheet from Colorado Municipal League, which shows you every single position within Colorado, and we're about 20% on average under of where we should be. And so really we would look at each individual position and try to get them kind of more in a comparable where they would be. So some employees, you know, may see a 5% increase, some will see larger. And yeah, so it will include every single department, and some different positions in the department are going to see different. Obviously, you know, some of our lower officers are drastically under where our officer is kind of a little bit closer to where the range should be. So there will be some adjustments really just based off the position, and it's really not a merit raise. It's just trying to get each position somewhere, so when you do a 3% or 4% every year, it's meaningful, because at least they're competitive. Will be kind of at the bottom range of that competitiveness.
So I'm just curious, does the rest of the board think that $55,000 is going to be enough to bring us up to that comparable 20% offset?
Well, I guess that's a question for Paul.
It gets us at the bottom range, but I'm also acutely aware we do have a lot of expenses coming up, and we just, it would be fiscally irresponsible to try to take it all at once. And you guys can always revisit this and amend the budget at any time. And if we have another great year, for instance, we can come back and revisit this in June or July and say, can we do another step? Or is there something else we can do? But, you know, the other thing we have coming up are also some areas we're grossly understaffed. And at some point, we're going to have to come back and revisit some staff positions, especially if we're going to be taking on these capital projects that we need to do. And, you know, trustees have expressed interest in having a police chief, which, you know, we need to get at some point. And we need more public works employees. We're going to need more office employees. And part of this, I'm going to go through and do some change up in some positions and give some different responsibilities and break some different responsibilities out. So I'm considering moving someone to an assistant manager to take on some more of the different roles that we would have, such as human resources and things along that line, to make people more productive. And not saying I think our staff is very productive for what they do, and utilizing equipment to make things more productive. But, you know, my recommendation to the board is this is a good start to get us there, and I think it's something we need to revisit in the future as funds become available. But I'm also aware we're going to be asking for more staff at some point in the future as we go forward. So I'd rather take it in steps and revisit it versus we go all at once and we have to pull it back.
So is this also considering those future positions?
It is not. This is for current employees only.
I really think we need to look at employee retention. We're going to be losing some key employees, and you know, we've got a lot invested in our employees as far as training and certifications and so forth, and I hate to see them leave. And if there's a way we can keep them, I really think we need to move forward with it for employee retention.
And I think they showed themselves many times how good they do their work. They're doing a great job with what limited staff that we got. And like, I agree, we can't lose what we got. I mean, we got a good team here and we don't want to lose it.
I think that would make a pretty bold statement to the employees.
I think this team has been put through the ringer. And it's time that we step up and get them taken care of.
Absolutely.
So with that said, just so we're clear, I will ask for just a motion to have me add additional $55,000 to the budget and the $2,400 for the insurance.
I would make the motion to add $55,000 to the budget for
Salaries, sorry.
salaries, and $2,400 to the budget for the insurance as well.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded that we add $55,000 to the salary and $2,400 for the additional insurance. Did I get that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Roll,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes, motion is hereby approved. Is that it under that?
That's all I have, and I assume the board has looked at it. Is there any other further questions that anybody has before we finalize it?
No.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Review of the town's compliance status with CDPHE and discussion on town's water and sewer system.
Okay. So Mayor and Trustees, I have some further correspondence from the Colorado Department of Health and Environment regarding the town's sewer system and TDS compliance. Just as a quick reminder, the town's sewer wastewater treatment plant operates under a permit from the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. And within those permit within the permit, there are parameters set for different levels and limits for toxins and things that we can discharge into groundwater. And one of those is TDS, which is total dissolved solids. In the prior years that the town has operated the sewer plant for the last couple of decades, our TDS limit has been a report only to the state of Colorado. We were issued a new permit late last year, and in that permit, CDHPE changed our limit to 400 on TDS, and we are currently somewhere in the range between 600 and 800 on the TDS, so more than double what the limit is that we were required to get. The health department did give us some options for us to turn in through basically doing a facility plan and a modification application, which myself and the town's engineer, Diamondback Engineering, which was Lauren Benton, helped me work on. And basically, and with that, our time for compliance with CDHPE is in February of 2020. So right around the corner, a few months away. So under what we did in the modification permit and the response for the facility evaluation, we explained our situation where we're receiving water from one aquifer and discharging our sewer effluent through a second aquifer, which is the Kiowa Bijou aquifer. According to the meeting we had with all the health department officials, we do not qualify for basically 125% of the groundwater discharge level, which would be another option besides the 400 TDS. They said that would not work for the town, just because we're bringing water in from a different aquifer to this aquifer. Also, with that said, it's highly unlikely we would even meet the 125% because we are seeing rising TDS. We know that we do have some issues with meeting the wet test out of the RO, so it's possible, very, very likely in the future that we will have to do something different with our RO system that would also increase more TDS coming into the system. And really, the only practical way to get rid of TDS is through ROing. There are some other methods. Just when you have high TDS, it's a difficult thing to do. So here's what we did. So we turned in this permit modification application, and which we have been working with the health department for the last 3 years as we've been kind of developing the town's project, working through the PERs that are required, engineering reports for the sewer plant. And we said, at some point in the future, the town will have to build another sewer plant because we are expanding. Our sewer plant is aging, it's old, and we know we're already running some problems because of age. And we asked them to basically just let us operate our current plant as is until we build another one. And which is, kind of reaching out there a little bit. Let's see, get the right paper here. So we did get a response I'm gonna have to take my glass off to read it. This is like 4 print. Old age. So, we did get a response from the health department related to that, and it actually, all in all considered, was not that bad of a response, because I wasn't expecting this good of a response. And I followed up with a phone conversation with them to clarify exactly what we're doing, and they were looking for a pretty quick response, and I told them I obviously need to go back to the board and kind of discuss the issue and get direction from the board before I could get anything back. But per our phone conversation yesterday, I cannot approve your modification request to extend the TDS compliance schedule without additional details regarding your proposal. If you did not provide a minute modification request at the division, a modification request that the division can approve prior to February 1, 2020, the TDS limit will become effective on February 1, 2020, as indicated in your current certification. If the proposed plan is addressed, if the proposed plan is to address TDS by attaining background level at the proposed new wastewater treatment facility site, then the discharge of that location prior to the completion of the new facility then will likely need to get specific dates and complete the following tasks. So this is what they want us to do to basically get this modification report. Submit a site location application to relocate the discharge point to the proposed new wastewater treatment facility. Submit an engineering design report addressing how the discharge will be distributed at the new location. Commence construction, e.g. the pipeline system and what those dates would be. Complete construction of the pipeline distribution system. Submit a groundwater monitoring plan to the division to conduct TDS background study. The date will be used to add additional milestones to complete background studies based on the example schedule and attached TDS guidance. Note that the division typically requires at least 1 year of groundwater monitoring in order to establish a background-based TDS for the site. Also, please note that the division may still consider a proposed plan to conduct TDS background study at the existing site. However, this scenario, you would likely need to provide additional geological information to show that this would be a possible option in your site given the issues discussed in the previous meeting. So, basically, they will allow us to possibly do some background studies at our existing site and see if that could come in compliance. However, the permit writers have already indicated that will be a hard sell for that. However, that may be something that will get us a temporary stay of our current requirement. The town, at this point, the town has known this has been coming for 2 years, and we've been talking about it actually longer than that. It's addressed in the PER, and I'm going to need direction on what we're going to do in order to address with this TDS. It is unlikely that we will ever be able to get in compliance where the current sewer plant is. There's really not a feasible scenario where that happens. The easiest and likeliest way to get in compliance, which most towns do, Fort Morgan and Brush, is we need to get the discharge to the river, because when you discharge to the river, you don't have a TDS limit. You have a wet test. And we have tested our effluents, and we're going to do one more wet test on it, and it does meet river discharge standards if we remove the chlorine from it, which is just a chemical process. So that is the cheapest scenario really on the table. We also have some, groundwater monitoring that we need to do, because on our location that we originally planned for the site, we have a background level of about 1,200 on the TDS, and in that range that we can get with 125%, which we currently would meet that now. The problem is if we have to make changes to the RO, we're no longer even going to meet that TDS schedule at the new site either, or any site. In that case, will be similar to Snyder and other communities where we're going to need large pieces of land to possibly evaporate water or discharge it into a deep injection well. At the end of the day, 10, 15 years from now, talking with permitting and looking where things are going, the town needs to be prepared in probably the next 10, 15 years. That's what's going to happen anyway. We're going to need to have a couple hundred acres that have large evaporation ponds, or a 13,000 feet deep injection well to deal with the water. That's coming down the line, because it's happening to the larger communities all across the Front Range right now. And this is not a Wiggins problem. This is a state of Colorado problem, and it's community after community that is facing this. This TDS is handed down by the EPA through the Clean Water Act. It's the CHPE to comply with Clean Water Act for basically all water that discharges, both aquifer and above ground, to the river. And where we're at is a geological kind of problem because we're downstream of where all the other sewer plants have been for hundreds of years, and so there's high TDS in the groundwater. We're also in a high agricultural area, which is a big cause of TDS introduction into the aquifer, into the river. If the board cannot give direction for me basically to submit this new location and site plan, it is clear that this project will go over to compliance and in February, and the town of Wiggins has once went through a compliance schedule with its water system because it did not act fast enough. And what a compliance schedule will typically look like is basically it'll be probably a 4 or 5 page document, and it's going to outline every step that they're going to require the town to do, a step-by-step process with a deadline and a date, and most likely with a end game of being in compliance within 2 years. And if you're not in compliance, then you run the risk of facing fines. And our permit does have violation of those fines. It is set at $10,000 per day for the town. So that's where we could end up if we just choose to do nothing. Rick, you got anything you want to add to that? This is Rick Findell, our town water attorney. So he's been working on the town water system for many years. 10 years.
The just a comment. The fines are up to $10,000 a day. They typically don't fine somebody who's trying hard to solve the problem the maximum amount, but they do typically fine people if you get in that situation. But there's always the threat of that level of fines, although it's probably not going to be $10,000 a day.
Correct.
It's still going to be a significant item that we want to avoid.
So my question would be, I guess for that would be there's a difference between, you said 2 years for us to be in complete compliance versus if we do continue now, we have possibly, what would you say, like 4.5 years?
So typically what you see in compliance schedules, ones that I've looked online from other communities that had wastewater issues, typically depends on the size of the town and the issues, but you see a schedule that's anywhere from 18 months to 36 months, somewhere in that year in ballpark, with the average probably around 24 months. Right now, what the health department is saying is you can write your own schedule. And the indication I've got from our multiple meetings, and we sat in there literally with about 15 people around the health department, you know, there's a possibility that we can get a 5+ year extension, long as we're making steps to get there. So that we're going to submit this plan. Here's what we're going to do. Here's where it's going to go. Here's how we're going to handle the discharge. For the next 12 months, we're going to do background studies on the location. Like I said, after that background study, you know, the next phase is we're going to install the pipeline to move the sewer plant, and that's going to take 3 years to do that, plus funding. Then the next 3 years would come. So, you know, I will ask for the maximum. I will try, you know, because we're a small town, it's going to take time to make that happen. So we will try to seek the maximum amount we can get and utilize our plant to the fullest till it obviously wants to get to capacity. So, you know, I would expect a schedule that will be probably approved maybe somewhere between 4 to 6 years would be my hope that I can get for the town, but we're going to hopefully see if it could be a little bit longer, because in reality this will be a big project for the town, and it's going to take that long, and the town is going to need to grow a little bit more to handle that, to have some more customers to pay for this and move things on. So, and I think they're aware of that, you know, through the process. And you know, even sitting around in that room and when I was with the multiple members of the health department, they admitted, boy, you guys are in a pickle. And yeah, we are, you know, because here's the regulation, and the regulations pretty well go across the board even, and we got to do something.
So my next question would be, if the board chose to move forward with the plan, when would the first payment to the town be due, and what a cost would possibly look like for the town?
So a first payment as in?
For that project.
Oh, for the project. So, you know, what we would start off with is engineering and
Okay.
getting some of the data to collect that they're requiring, and that process, which we already have some of that money built into the budget already to move forward for next year, so that's kind of handled. And then really what we would do is break this out into a phased project. So obviously we have purchased land. We still need to, next thing we're going to talk about is the financing of that land in order to do that. If we're going to move it to the place where it's within the PER, which is the only place really I can conduct any of these things they're asking for, because it's the only land the town owns to complete that. You know, the next step would be then applying for a grant and a loan to just basically build the pipeline to get the effluent to the river. Then we could basically at that point probably come in compliance by getting that water to the river. That's, you know, we'll obviously going to do some more testing to ensure that before we do that. And you know, that process is probably, you know, 4 to 5 years out before, you know, if you do it through a USDA grant loan, then you're probably looking at 4 or 5 years out to do that. Then the final step would be then connecting the sewer plant to that pipeline. So you know, we definitely is it's an you know, the whole thing is probably an 8 to 10 year project before it's all said and done.
So as far as upfront costs, we're not going to have a big upfront cost immediately, but we're eventually going to have a large cost. Maybe not necessarily like a balloon payment per se, but just for people that may not understand how this whole scenario works, I'm just trying to, in a sense, ask a question to be able to open up discussion a little bit so that we can all clarify the understanding of not just we understand that we need the system in order to come into compliance for what has been brought to us by CDPHE. Therefore, if we can also make sure that everybody understands how this is going to be charged to us, to a town, so that we're not, so people don't think that we're going to get a $30 million bill in the mail, you know, after we say, you know, move forward or not move forward, however this works. So that's kind of where that question is going.
Sure. So, you know, right now over the next year, if they accept our plan as we propose it, we will, and I'm just ballparking estimate at this point. You know, we probably will have somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 to $25,000 worth of water testing to do. Most of the tests, you know, we got to maybe run $1,400 a test, and we're going to do multiple tests of backgrounds and things along that line. It's more than likely we will have to install a few testing wells, and you know, those. Have you done any of those lately? 5 to 10 grand a well, maybe.
It sounds right.
Yeah, somewhere 5 to 10 grand a well, and that could be up to 4 wells. So you know, we may this year have to spend around anywhere, just to be broad, $50,000 to $100,000 just to kind of do what we need to do to make sure we're going to meet that. You know, the risk we run is there is another community that's off of I-25, and they got permitted to build a new sewer plant. It was a 3 or 4 year construction project. I believe it was Cherokee Hills. I talked to their manager. Had the whole thing permit, the whole thing approved by the health department, and they go to get their final permit to open the plant, and all of the standards changed. And the day one they opened, they were out of regulation with the permit. We're not in compliance with the operating permit. And they had to go back and literally spend millions upon millions basically ROing the effluent. So the health department it's going to be a moving target. Everything's going to get stricter. Everything's is eventually just that's where it's heading. And I don't think it's, you know, it really doesn't matter what administration is in, that's what's going to be happening over the years. And where we're at in Colorado, just with the high TDS and the water, I think we're always going to be under the gun to keep improving the water system, because we are the headwater for multiple rivers, and everything obviously flows down. So yeah, I mean, my goal, you know, basically if we are forced to follow a compliance schedule, it's going to cost the town a lot more, a lot fast, if that makes sense. If we can set the schedule and control where things are going, then we have the opportunities, just like we've had on the water tower and the first phase of the sewer project, to apply for grants and to apply for loans. And you know, we You know, we had the $8 million water project, and $2 million that was in grants. So that's money we don't have to pay. The citizens don't have to pay. So that's the same thing. You know, what's nice is not nice, but now that we're in non-compliance, that sets you up for more grant money. Basically, the worse the system is, the more money you get. That's how the system works. People that run the system good don't get as much money through the system. So, you know, the goal is to have time, you know, so that we can absorb this in steps and not just take it all at once. But it is going to cost, I mean, I'm not going to, you know, we can't beat around the bush. It's going to cost money.
Yeah, we're just visiting here about whether or not we need to move forward, and I believe we do need to move forward so we can get this plan in front of the health department, and if they will approve what we're presenting, then that gives us that 4 to 6 year window to go ahead and get our engineering done and so forth. If we don't, and they come back on us and say, you got 2 years,
That'd
Don't
be
wanna
really
get
tough.
rushed on that. I mean,
That would be
mistakes
very
can happen
difficult.
getting rushed.
And to be clear, and to be clear, that is what we're asking for. The compliance schedule says February right now. Our operating permit says February. However, you know, we have been working very diligently with the health department and been in communication with them. You know, I've sat in their office. You know, our engineers we've been talking to them. You know, we do monthly phone calls almost. So, you know, they are working with us and they're aware of our situation. So I feel, you know, confident that, you know, common sense will prevail and, you know, that they will recognize our situation and give us the time we need to work through it.
well, kind of to answer your question, Mark, it's gonna be a lot better to spread this out over 4 to 6 years and decide what design changes you need to make through that period than it will be to be forced to do it within 24 to 36 months.
Right.
And if you try to do it in that short of a period of time, you're gonna make a mistake that could cost a lot more money.
Agreed.
So I really believe we need to move forward with this permit as Paul has described and ask him for the 4 to 6 years of time to work through this.
So I guess I have another question along with the lines of engineering, because you brought up the fact of another system that was brought online and failed. Do the engineers that we're working with have a simulator system to be able to, I guess, plug in our data and figure out if this thing's going to work or fail?
So this, to be clear, the system didn't fail. The system was
Out of
built.
compliance.
Yeah, the system was built as it was designed to be built. The finish line got moved, and we are a smaller system. There are some other things in that system that really don't comply. You know, they're in the Denver water aquifer, which is a very precious aquifer and a very protected aquifer. I would by the health department because it serves a lot of people, and it's a closed, I believe, a closed basin aquifer. So with that said, there's whatever we need to do, we need to build something that doesn't trap the town, because more than likely, even if we get it built, at some point in the future, something's going to change. And really the trend from all my visits and talking with other municipal officials and talking with engineers, they're not going to be laxing a lot of regulations. And TDS is one of those I think that is going to keep coming up. Because they know the standard is hard to meet, and that's why they gave options to not meet the 400 TDS standard, because they know a lot of people can't meet them, and they're working with towns to do that. But they also stated they don't want towns to have to sit there and put an RO on the back end, a reverse osmosis on the back end of their sewer plant.
Right.
However, that's what's starting to happen with some communities. So, you know, I could see the day coming in the next decade or two where that is going to be a possibility, where we're going to have to clean the water coming out. Then we're going to have to either evaporate or deep inject the brine that comes out of it. And you know, for instance, our current RO system, there are some days we make 60,000 gallons of brine coming out of that system at a 15% clean. So you know, that's a large size swimming pool in a backyard that's created every day. So that takes a lot of time to evaporate. So, you know, we could be talking 40, 60, 80, 100 acres of lined ponds, you know, in the future. And, you know, not now, hopefully, as we go through that. That's what we may end up with when it's all said and done. But, you know, right now, I know if we can get our water to the river, we can get in compliance. And we're going to keep confirming that through multiple different tests that we can get in compliance. However, I'm still aware that our TDS levels may go up, and long term that may not be viable to get it to the river or get it into the groundwater, and then we're going to have that option of what do we do.
So
And that's coming.
my next question, I have lots of questions,
Shoot.
is from I don't know if you can answer this, from an engineering perspective, is there such thing as a warranty, so that if an engineering firm comes up with a design, say that it's going to work, do they warranty the fact that it can comply with what the state is requiring, so that if the day comes where we do have that start date of operation, and then it's out of compliance, that it's not costing the town more funds to be able to jump into that next hoop to come into compliance further?
Well, when you have something engineered out, you know, you're basically, they're going to test the water and see what the operating permit, and they design that system to meet or exceed those standards. Trying to guess what the standard is in 10 or 20 years is going to be hard to know, but we know it's going to get worse, and we know TDS. So could they do that? Probably, but then maybe you're adding $10 or $20 million right now into your system that you don't need for maybe 10 years from now.
Okay.
And so what you don't want to do is build this in a place where you're trapped and you can't expand it, because whatever's going to happen at some point, this town's going to have to build evaporation ponds or a deep well. Every town's going to end up doing that at some point in the future. It's very likely that will happen. When I say every town that has high TDS issues like we do out here on the plains and in some areas.
You can get engineers, you can get a greater than normal warranty, but you pay for it.
Understood. Thank you.
They'll build that into their price and charge you accordingly.
Yeah, I guess there's no guarantee that when it's done that they're not gonna change the regulations, and so that's something that's gonna be,
Cherokee got tripped up with exactly the same standard. It was a discharge to groundwater, and it was the 400 TDS standard. For that pollutant, for dissolved solids, it's a more stringent standard than if you discharge to the river, because with groundwater, people drill wells and they drink it, and they add some chlorine to kill the bacteria, but there's no other treatment. So the groundwater has standards that attempt, at least, to make it safe for people who drill wells and drink it. And the river, if you want to drink that water, you have to build a water treatment plant anyway. So they can let the river be a little less clean than the groundwater, knowing that for public health protection, if somebody's going to drink out of the river, there will be a water treatment plant between the river and the customer. But it's the putting the wastewater into the groundwater is where this TDS issue comes from. There's some other ones when you go to the river, but
Like hence why with the agricultural thing and that, a lot of cows and everything else like that, all their waste net, it does absorb through the ground, ends up in the groundwater supply, which causes a lot of TDS levels.
And the and the reason why we have high TDS in our wastewater is because we have high TDS in the water that we drink. It's which comes up out of the ground. So the levels out there on the where the new plant might go, if we were to put wastewater into the ground, it's already pretty, pardon the expression, crappy water.
Well, and kind of playing on that, the point, the time is probably going to come as well that we're going to have to get our brine from our RO plant into either a deep injection well or into into evaporation ponds as well. I mean, that's probably gonna be around the corner, as well. We have been doing the testing using the Magna, flea, for the wet test, and we passed one, we failed one. And so we're gonna run another scenario to see what that looks like and, see if that would work, using the chronic testing and go from there. So, it might be a short-term solution, but it may not be a long-term solution as well. So it's gonna be even more important that we're gonna have to look at the sewer and the brine from the RO kind of more as one project and see what to do with both of those as we move forward.
So I have another question. In previous conversations with you, you had mentioned that there's a possibility to be able to use the effluent from the treatment center for augmentation purposes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Currently in our, what court case number is that we have? It on
In
record?
our 2014 water rights case, we do have the ability, when we discharge wastewater back to the South Platte River, to the extent that it comes from the water system, from the South Platte wells, when we put it back, that will increase the amount that we can use out of our wells. It can offset. As it's set up now, we have to replace basically what we take from our South Platte wells. And all the water comes into town, and because we're in the closed basin and not in the South Platte River, what comes back out of the wastewater, or what we call the return flow in water rights lingo, doesn't get back to the river. But when we put it back in the river, then we'll get credit for that, and it will allow us to divert more water, run it through the RO plant, and have more supply for the town and more clean supply for the town.
So that would be an advantage to have it at that location versus another location.
And we have that already. We've got that already in our water rights decrees. We anticipated the wastewater discharge. What we don't have in there is the option from the new plant. One of the things we've talked about at the new plant is either discharging directly to the river or putting it in groundwater on the site out there on the Knievel farm, and we don't have that part of it in. Although
It will be in the court case we're gonna be filing.
it'll be in the court case that we do plan to file.
Okay.
But we already have the provision for a discharge to the river in our water rights.
Good.
Thank you.
We gotta move forward.
You don't have an option. So what kind of motion do you need to move forward on this with the health department?
Well, if everybody is, I just need to know everybody's comfortable in me submitting the plan to the health department based off the plan that's outlined in the PER is, I assume, really what I'm looking for.
Well, I'd make the motion to submit the plan to the health department based on the plan in the, what,
PER,
PDR?
PER,
PER?
preliminary engineering report, yes.
Preliminary engineering report. Okay, I make that motion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we submit that plan to include the PER.
Mm-hmm. Or submit it as it's written in the PER.
Submitted as written in the PER. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Motion is hereby approved. Okay. Discussion on financing of the town's water and sewer obligations.
Sure. So, Mayor and Trustees, as you are aware, the town has approximately a $2,850,000 loan with Bank of West. We had some discussions at some prior meetings where, and I'm gonna round numbers off, the town looked at doing the first phase of the project that's in the PER, which basically includes the land purchase, the legal and engineering, as well as building the augmentation ponds, that the agreement that the board unanimously agreed on to participate with Central Water. And at the time, there was not enough votes to move forward. Roughly, that was roughly a $5 million, 2.25% 40-year loan for $5 million of it, and a $4,300,000 grant from the United States Department of Agriculture with a to be hopefully awarded $800,000 grant from the Department of Local Affairs. At the time, that motion did not have enough votes to move forward. So that kind of triggered, part of that was to pay off for the current Bank of West loan that we have. So the board instructed me to look at some alternative financing for that 2,850 for us to carry it, because obviously we can't, make that debt payment when it's due at the end of December. So generally been talking with Bank of West, and kind of we're trying to throw a couple different options out there, and I still have a couple other banks that are looking at it and considering it. It's kind of in the review process right now. But Bank of West has come back, and they would look at financing that portion in kind of a principal and interest scenario, because that was the goal. If we were going to move forward, we're going to have to start working paying that off. The best terms they would be willing to do is a 10-year note with a 10-year amortization schedule. It would be based off LIBOR plus 2.5%, which is floating around 5% or so roughly right now, with an 8% cap on that. And they also are going to require a 1-year payment reserve, which would be roughly about $480,000. And LIBOR kind of floats anywhere between 1.9, 2.5, 3%. It really hasn't gone too crazy in the last few years. I think it's been 10 years since it's been really high. So that's the one proposal that they looked at. They also would be willing to kind of extend the current note we have for possibly another 120 to 160 days to give our bond counsel, Kim, to kind of work through the notes and the options that we would have, which is usually that does take a little bit of time to get put together. So that's all I have right now to report, and just want to get directions on where the board kind of wants to go with that as we move forward. Oh, then just as a general follow-up, also the board did approve moving forward with the water and sewer project, and so we have received paperwork from CoBank that would do the intern financing on the $6 million project portion of that, and I believe they're about LIBOR plus 2 floating, and that will just be a temporary construction loan until we have the USDA takeout. So Kim Crawford, our town's bond counsel, is going to start looking through that paperwork, and we'll be visiting with the bank's attorneys to kind of look at set that up. We still have about 2 pages of requirements and forms that we got to submit to USDA and kind of get all the little T's crossed and I's dotted through that process. So we'll be working on that over the next month or so to kind of get that cleaned up. So I would expect maybe that package toward the end of the year, probably at the January, February meeting, moving that package forward. So need direction on what you would like to do with the Bank of West project.
USDA loan and grant, when would that take effect if we go ahead and accept that?
If you went ahead and moved forward with phase 1 of the project, the PER, with that, basically $5 million loan, $5 million grant, we still have the Department of Local Affairs piece that I would need to apply for, and that piece, if I have started it already, at least I had it started, and I can get it cleaned up. That due date is actually December 1. It's a pretty hefty grant. If I could get that in by December 1 and we get an award, it possibly could be, we would be able to at least have that part done by summer, when the project to go in fall. If I don't get it off, I think their next turn-in date's probably, April, somewhere in that ballpark, then that would, definitely put it to late fall or this time next year for it to go. So, we would still be a year away, basically, from having to move forward.
Does that DOLA grant have to be in place for the USDA?
Yes. Yeah, because it's part of the term sheet.
So we need to move forward with the DOLA first?
That would be the next piece of the puzzle. to put together for the project, yes.
So you'll have it in there by the 1st?
I probably could get it done. I got it started. I could probably get some time to get it done.
So if we move forward with this and the Bank of the West, you said give how many days? It's 160 days, you say?
Well, if you move forward with the loan grant and decide to move forward with that, then basically we're gonna go back and renegotiate everything and go back and ask for what we basically have now, which is an interest only to hold it as we move forward instead of going to a 10-year P&I. So it would set up a whole scenario. So that scenario really wasn't on the table, so we never discussed that scenario. So we just been talking short term and been talking, I asked them for, a 20-year amortization. They won't do it because, that really pumps the payment up a lot when you're doing a 10-year. You're talking, probably $40,000 a month, somewhere in that ballpark. So we would have to go back and say, we have, direction now, and this is what we want to do. And that's been kind of the hard thing with some of the other banks. They are, they want to know what the long-term plan is, what we're doing, and it's like, don't have one at the moment. We're just kind of in a pause moment, and they're struggling while they see, basically a way to take it out, and the board hasn't acted on it. So that's been kind of struggling a little bit as I've been dealing with the financing. And so yeah, with that said, I would have to go back and redo. No matter what, we'll probably ask for a short-term extension. Then if the board wants to reconsider that, we can reconsider it. Then I would go back and then talk to Bank of West and try to set something up different than what we've been talking about for the last 2.5 months.
Either way you look at it, we sit here and do nothing and it's costing us money.
Kind of throwing
Right.
money in the air.
I don't know. I'm tired of spinning the wheels. We gotta move forward.
Do you have any questions on Mark?
Not at this moment.
I think we need to move forward with the original plan of the USD grant and loan and proceed. It's not gonna get any cheaper. And for the longer we wait, and it's a project that needs to be done.
I also think it's a pretty fair offer that we've been afforded this opportunity. That discussions I've had with Paul in the past say that most don't get anywhere near this size of opportunity. And if we wait, the question I asked to him was, is there a possibility that we could get more in the future? And he said, absolutely not. They'd probably not even give us half. So that was really concerning, that if we don't use it, we lose it, and the time is now.
And
In referencing that, just clearly, that was just strictly grant money. I mean, we were awarded
Correct.
almost
Right.
a 50% grant by USDA, which is, and 5 years ago, there was the commonplace, and now as you do your conversations with them, they tell you to plan on 10 and 15 if you're having a good day, and we're they were 40-something%. So plus then you add the DOLA on, we're almost at 50.
well, things are getting more expensive every year. It's not getting any lower.
No.
If we look at a couple years down the line, it could be a lot more if we don't do something.
Comment?
I already said what I think.
I really believe we need to move forward with this. I'd hate to see us not be able to get a 40% grant again. That's huge on this project, so that's a huge amount.
So what do we have? So
Motion.
agreement, motion?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely need instruction, because you guys, the motion that was made last time, a couple months ago, did not pass. It was tied.
All right. Move that we move forward
With the USDA loaning
for
grant.
the USDA loan and grant.
Good enough? Okay.
second that.
Motion has been made and seconded that we move forward with the USDA loan and grant. Is that what you said correctly?
Yes.
All right. For the water project. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Roll,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Motion is hereby approved. Discussion on the Wiggins sewer rates for 2020.
Okay. So, Mayor and Trustees, a part of our budget conversations we've been discussing is reevaluating and looking at the town sewer rates. The town had not made any changes in sewer rates for well over 4 years now. Back in 5 years now, I believe. Back in 2015, the town had the Colorado Rural Water Association conduct a rate study, and the goal of the rate study was just how do we maintain where we're at, not including capital projects, because at the time we just don't want to bear that. But that rate study basically came back in 15 and said that minimum, just to keep up with the increase in cost of living or the consumer price index, we needed to be doing 3% per year. And what I don't want to do is get in a situation where we have to do large rate increases when we can do smaller rate increases that maybe be $1 or $2 a year, per month, versus having to come in and say, here's a $20 increase or something large. So the other problem we were doing originally, we set up with our bills where we kind of calculate the 3 or 4 months of the winter usage. I think it's 4 months of the winter usage, and that bill is based off of that and on usage, which is, as we're getting more customers, it's becoming very difficult and hard really to keep up with that. And most towns just have a flat residential rate and then charge your commercial customers on usage, and that's how we were originally set up. And we're finding most of our residential users fall somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 gallons, with basically 3,000 gallons on average of use during the winter months. So that's what's being used in the toilets and things along that line. So the average bill, and we're just talking sewer, so the average bill is $27.50 that most people see on their water and sewer bill. So looking at that rate set, if we kind of caught up, it would be roughly around $31 if we just did a set rate. What I would like to propose that we do, because we know the costs are going to continue to increase for the sewer system and operations. We're already there, and as more capital projects have it, we want to make sure we're just taking steps so it's not a shock. Taking that $27.50 and for residential users, just do a flat $30 per month to start with for 2020, then just build in 3.5% increases for the next 3 years. That would just automatically hit during the year, which equals about $1.05 per month for a residential user. And that way it kind of takes a little bit of shock and awe off of it. Then with the commercial users, we would just look at doing that 10% increase to get caught up, because they are based off their usage. So I'm not sure if that 10% will just be off the rate, but it will probably be off of usage rate. So that $1.55 will go up 10%. We'll add 15 cents to the $1.55 per thousand that we would see. So that's kind of where we're at. We've been trying not to obviously touch that. We're trying not to touch water rates at all. We're doing really good with the water system, just with all the new users we have on. It's really increased and starting to spread the cost. As you can see, we had a lot of additional revenues. The building has been phenomenal for the water system as far as starting to help build some reserves and things along that line for some of these projects we have coming. The sewer, however, it has been lagging behind, and we haven't. It's just such a smaller amount. It takes more people really to get it caught up on the revenues, and the expenditures are exceeding that quicker than what we can. So I just wanted to see how everybody feels with that schedule. This would not be something that will be acted on this meeting. If you give me authority to move forward, then we'll prepare a resolution for our ordinance, which would have to bring an adjustment to the rate resolution for a rate change before the board.
We kind of had that discussion in the budget, didn't we?
Yeah. Yes, we have. We have.
We also determined that would alleviate some of the bookkeeping that's being done in the front office as well, so that would
That's
be a
correct.
little bit of a savings to the town as well,
That's correct.
so.
Is everybody okay with the numbers I proposed out?
My question is, with that 10% towards commercial, is that all commercial, or is that like a specific commercial, as far as who that's going to?
So we have about 69 commercial users, so that will be, you know, everything from the rest area to gas stations to restaurants. It'll also include the school, it'll include, you know, the senior center we have doesn't have anybody in it. Basically anything that's a commercial use. And generally commercial users are the harder users on the system. That's where we get our grease from, that's where we get our high BOD levels and the stuff that makes it harder to run the system. So it does take a little bit more for a commercial user versus just a typical, you know, person using their sink and toilet things on that line. So yeah, so that'll be, you know, basically a 15, 16 cent increase per thousand is what they will see.
You said 10 or
So the current rate is $1.55, and so that would be 15 cents, right? 15 and a half cents basically. So 16 cents increase from that $1.55 will be added onto it
per thousand.
per thousand, correct?
And then you said for residential that would be go to a fixed rate of 31.
Of 30.
30,
Is what I
excuse me.
proposed. So the 31 was, you know, basically what it would be if we did the 3% for now. But you know, my thought is let's start it at 30, a round number. Then it'll be basically about a $1.05 increase every year for the next 3 years.
We've left this alone for a long time.
Yeah.
We didn't wanna, but when you start falling behind the 8 ball, we gotta.
My thought is I mean, nobody wants their rates to go up. I don't want my rates to go up, but at the same time I'd much rather have to pay a little extra to get the most precious thing that I can't go all the way to the river with my car to get and take care of my whole family. Because I really don't want to have to invest in a tanker to truck it up to my house on a daily basis.
This is the stuff you're trucking out.
Well,
Yeah, that's even more dangerous.
right.
Still, it's gotta be transported.
Right, it's got to be transported, and,
That's
and
right.
I don't want to have to do it myself.
You gotta go
yeah,
somewhere.
so I'd much rather just have to pay a small fee than to have to do it myself.
I do believe a stepped increase over a period of years is gonna be a lot easier for people than having to say, here, we gotta go $10 a month increase. So I really think that 2.5, is that what it figures out to, 2.5 a month?
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically around $2.50 increase. I mean, there are a few people that are just use 1,000 gallons, and so you know they're basically paying around a little over $24. So you know they will see a $6 increase, but you know most of them are in that 2,000 to 4,000 range. There are a few people that actually will see a decrease. There are some people that use 6,000 to 8,000 gallons a month in water. So those people will see a decrease in their bill, but eventually it will just average out.
So was that just from 0 to 10,000 range, as far as usage?
We don't have one.
No, our maximum uses is there's probably not one over 6,000 gallons, is there?
For sewer?
Residential, yeah, on just residential.
Yeah, no, not on sewer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there may be a few here and there, but not many.
Okay.
Is everybody okay with that? My nodding of the heads?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay. So with that said, I will have that resolution prepared for the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Review of bids for purchase of side-by-side UTV.
So Mayor and Trustees, if you'll look in your packet, in this year's budget, we also have allocated funds for another side-by-side that's used by our public works staff, and obviously our summer help. We find it's the most economical way, especially for our younger ones to get around, and when we do meter reads and things along that line as far as savings gas. Stan Dooley, our Public Works Supervisor, back this up a little bit, was able to go look at one of them. So basically the first two bids we have from Wickham and from Wild West is for a Polaris, and that's what we currently have. We now have a local business in town that sells Coyote side-by-sides. That is a town business, and he happens to be the lowest bidder on the project. And Stan went and looked at this, and it's actually a diesel where the other ones are gas, and it has a steel bed to it, and it's a little heavier built, and it gave us a pretty good discount on it. $3,500 off of it from Wiggins Electric. And it has a top speed of 30 miles an hour, which is good when we're using our summer help. So Stan's recommendation, my recommendation to the board, that we would accept the bid in the amount of $9,200, plus the cost to install a windshield, which will be a few $100s.
The windshield was included.
Oh, the windshield was included. Okay, windshield was included for $9,200 from Wiggins Electric.
Paul, do these others not have a steel bed?
They're plastic beds.
Oh.
Yeah. Which is okay. I mean, they work fine.
Sounds like it would crack in the cold.
We haven't really had that problem,
No.
so we're hoping our Polaris. We have one that's basically not a real old one that we replaced with this other one we bought 2 years ago, and it's just gone. But even the other one we have now is starting to show some really good signs of wear on the joints and stuff. Because we obviously use them for heavy stuff moving around in public work. So we're actually think maybe this brand might be a little bit better with the diesel engine. It seems a little heavier built.
It's also a 2-passenger unit as well.
Yeah,
As well as three?
3 passenger. Yes.
And you said their bid was 9,200?
Yes.
That's the
It's
Mm-hmm.
the Wiggins.
way below than that one.
Wiggins
Yeah.
Electric.
I was looking
Yep.
at their 3-passenger on this one here compared to the other.
And I want to say in the budget, I think I budgeted 12.5 toward it. So we're doing.
Was it 12.5 or was it?
I think we had 12.5 set in the budget because usually I got to buy the windshield for it. So.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Are we required to tag these?
No.
No. Okay. Well, that's
Well, we put a sticker thing on it.
okay.
So.
So that's a lot less expensive than, say, a pickup that we would have to tag.
Actually, for the town of Wiggins, it costs us, I think, $13 to tag a vehicle. So that's not too expensive. So really, our savings is just wear and tear. For instance, the tires we go through on our public works vehicles, and they utilize a lot of gas. And sometimes they're just not as convenient because we're in the park, so we need to get on the sidewalks, we need to get on the trails, and get on those things to take care of that. So
Does Wiggins Electric do repair on these?
I don't know that for sure. Generally, it's my guys that end up doing most of the repairs on the
Well, I
stuff.
mean, if it's like under warranty or something. Like
Yeah,
that.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They would cover
most
the
dealers
warranty.
have to do something, to
Yeah.
warranty their product. Well, Mark, you haven't made a motion tonight. Want to go for it? Assuming you want it.
He seconded one.
I did second.
So you would just, if you want to move
To
forward.
accept the Wiggins Electric bid.
Did, yep.
I make a motion to accept the Wiggins Electric bid for the ATV or the UTV
Mhm.
The
Second.
amount of?
in the amount of $9,200.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we accept the bid from the Wiggins Electric for the UTV in the amount of $9,200. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Roll,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. The purchase of the UTV is hereby approved. Okay. Discussion of the sale of the farmhouse.
So, Mayor and Trustees, during our budget workshops and conversations I brought before the board, that our farmhouse located on P Highway is no longer occupied. And the town of Wiggins really does not want to be in the landlord business and renting it out. So we have budgeted, part of our budget is the sale of the farmhouse. It is currently left over land, and it's not a part of the park system and never was planned to be a part of the park system. With that said, in order for me to prepare that house for sale, I want to inform the board of a couple things that should and need to happen. The first thing is I'm going to have to survey off the property in order to sell it, and so roughly around $4,500 for that survey. It'll probably include around 1 acre of land. In addition to that, the town is going to keep the barn on the back side of it because we're actually required to keep it, because that's where we store our planks for our levee control, which has to be under storage, and we don't have any other place to store that. So it'll kind of divide right between those two buildings. There's a couple of feet between that. Just for the safety of the stuff that's back there in the public works, we need to install a fence around the property that we're going to square off, so if there's kids and things like that, they don't get back there and get hurt, because sometimes we store equipment back there, or sometimes we have operating machinery around there. So that fence, I was able to get 1 bid, and I'm not asking the board to approve the bid because I need to bring 3 bids in front of you, but I'm going to give you a ballpark for price. That's $18,000 roughly to put a fence around that. Yeah, fences are pricey. Also, there's probably about $10,000 just worth of repairs that should be done to the house, just to kind of get it a little bit more in a sellable condition. So that's presentable, if we can get a little higher dollar out of it. And some of those are appliance related, and maybe a little bit of the heater related, some things along that line, just in some doors need to be taken care of, things along that line. And also the house is hooked up to the town's water system, but is not hooked up to the town sewer system, because up to 3 years ago we didn't have sewer anywhere near there. So we need about $7,500, and so we can now hook it into the sewer line that we have running on the back side of that property through there. So roughly, there's around $40,000 worth of things that need to be done to the house. So at this point, I'll probably, if the board wants to move forward with the sale, I just need the board to make a motion to authorize me to list the property in the near future, and authorize me to go ahead and seek bids to do the work on the house.
I got a few questions.
Yes.
The barn, that's not on the actual property, is it?
Well, it's all on one big 65-acre platted piece of property. So we're going to subdivide the barn that faces to the south off.
Okay.
Now, before this is
But
put
it
up-
will include the garage that's a part of the house.
Now, before this is put up for sale, we're gonna have to put the fence around first, right?
I would like to get that done, yes. I mean, we may put, it may be simultaneously the fence is going in and the sign goes up. But before we put it up for sale, we probably will take care of the sewer system, and we obviously got to survey it. And so that all could be happening together as we go through the process. I did get 1 bid for the fence, and problem is we're going to be running into winter, and that was a little bit below $18,000. I mean, you can authorize me to spend up to $18,000 and go ahead and get another 2 bids, and I can just go with the best and lowest bid, and also with the repairs if you want me to go ahead and do that and not wait till the next meeting. I think that would probably be okay to do that.
I guess I just don't understand one thing. Why do we need to have the house hooked up to the sewer system?
One, it's actually required by our ordinances and by our USDA, I believe, says that every facility needs to be hooked up. And it's in the city property.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it is in the city limits, so it will be a municipal house.
Okay.
And we've already had some septic issues in the past, so it needs to be, we would have to disclose that anyway. So I think it would help the value of the house too. Because when we'd have to disclose septic issues and one that's hooked to the town sanitary sewer, then that makes the house more valuable. We're probably, obviously I just need to get an estimate. We're probably looking at mid-2s for the house, with it squared off, maybe a little bit more, but that's probably be the range. And obviously the realtors would, give us some comparisons on where to list that at. And we'll try to get our most bang for the buck, obviously.
So we're looking at possibly $30,000 in investment to get it up to
About 40.
40,000 to get it up to sale.
Yes. And most of that, half of that's defense and repairs. Yeah, so sewer 7,500, repairs 10, fence 18, and survey 4,500. So if you want to go ahead and start moving forward with this stuff, you know, you could make a motion to authorize me to, you know, expend up to $40,000 to do the repairs of the house and then list the house. Then once we get an offer on the house, then Melinda will have to prepare a couple things, both a resolution and an ordinance, or just resolution?
It'll just be a subdivision plat resolution that'll go through the
Okay.
board.
How about for the sale of the house
Oh,
itself?
for the sale of the house will need to be an ordinance
So-
approved
so-
by the board.
Yeah, so you would, yeah, so we would have the subdivision come through, so that'd be one thing that would need to be done, that the board would have to approve. A resolution to accept the contract, so the contract actually become before you, so it'll be contingent upon the review of the board if any contracts sell. Then an ordinance to sell the property would have to come before you guys as well. Very similar, we sold the other house there in
Yeah,
Fort Morgan
yeah,
that we
Fort
owned,
Morgan.
and it was a process, obviously.
Yeah.
And we'll still be getting something back, even though we have to pay something
Right.
to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
we're in
we
compliance.
hopefully will be getting a little over 200,000 out of the house when it's all said and done.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
How much property will be subdivided out for that house? Just curious,
Yeah,
more than anything.
Off the top of my head, it'll probably be an acre. Basically, it's a circle driveway, so we'll just kind of include the edge of the driveway to the edge of the driveway, and so it'll be somewhere about an acre of land.
Motion?
I move to go ahead and authorize Paul to sell the house on the farm.
So probably a motion for me to list the house with a realtor and also expend $40,000 for
Okay.
the repairs that we discussed. in
Prepare the house for sale with approximately $40,000 of repairs and to list it for sale with a realtor.
Second.
Everybody heard the motion?
We got it.
All right.
We're being
Roll-
recorded, I can get
Further
it.
discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Roll,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Motion is hereby approved. Number 7, public comment policy.
Sure. So, Mayor and Trustees, at one of the prior meetings, a couple of the board members asked Melinda to send some examples of some public policies over. And I'm just going to briefly kind of go over what we currently do and briefly go over a couple things in the public policy. Then I'll probably just turn it over to Melinda so you can ask some questions on how to do that and things along that line. But currently, the town of Wiggins doesn't have a formal policy. We've voted and agreed on some current policies where they're at. So currently, we try to follow the guidelines that we have been taught by CIRSA, the town's insurance agency, in regards to public policy and comment items. And generally, that's how most towns are set up. So basically, what we have now is public policy comment is limited to 3 minutes. Speakers should not be interrupted by the board members. We show respect to all speakers, even if you dislike or disagree. And rebuttal or comments by the board back to the speakers are discouraged. And that's come, if you recall, Sam came in and that was a part of our CIRSA training is, we should be listening and not engaging back and forth during the speakers, which, we fall short on that a lot. And that's just mainly a liability issue. As far as for agendas, currently the agendas are prepared by the town manager and the clerk, usually in combination. They are based off of business that the town needs to conduct in order to operate or items that need it to be acted on. And it's also based off of comments received from prior board meetings of items that would like to be addressed in agendas in the future or things that are important to the board that need to be brought up, and those are brought on the future agenda. For specific things, the board actually has voted on this, that if there's specific something somebody wants on the agenda that would be brought before the board meeting, the board would take a vote, and that item would be on the agenda if it is passed by a majority of the board. So So real briefly, just on the stuff that Melinda sent over, and I kind of highlighted some of the highlights, unless you have them highlighted.
No,
Okay.
go for it. Go for it.
Because I don't know if all the board members got through everything. So for the town of Picton, for their agenda item, it says the agenda content is either brought forward from the previous meeting or requested by a board member during a previous meeting, or as requested by the attorney or deemed necessary by the mayor. Any request subsequent preparation of agenda item requires a significant attorney or staff time must previously be approved by a majority of the vote. So that's how they handle agenda items. And then picking with public comment, they have a maximum of 30 minutes that the public can speak and a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. In Netherlands, they also have a maximum of 30 minutes for speakers to speak, and they allow up to 6 minutes to speak. Individuals who are not, and they must register to speak their comments before the meetings. No, I'm sorry, I was looking at the other Netherlands. 3 minutes to speak to the board for Netherlands. Creed. Creed is a little bit different because they do workshops, so they agree at the workshop to place it on the agenda, which we don't do. Public comment that's unscheduled is allowed 3-minute opportunity to address the board. It's very similar to what we do. They limit public comment to 3 minutes. Mountain Village, council members so moving shall briefly explain the appropriateness of amendments, and they require basically a 2/3 vote to bring something up of the quorum. The mayor sets the time for audience public speaking anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes. So basically, that's really what you're seeing is a consensus of generally the manager or the mayor sets the agenda items. They're usually based off of prior meetings. The boards at, for instance, this meeting could vote to say, I want that on the agenda, and take a vote and they put it on the agenda. You're across the board pretty well seeing 3 minutes for speaking, which is what we do. And really, because if you've gotten any source of training, that's kind of what they say. You go too long and you run this risk, and back and forth. So that's generally what you see across the board. So really, it's a lot of towns do limit it to 30 minutes. We've really never had a problem of going, I don't think ever over 45 minutes of public speaking for most of the time. If we don't engage in back and forth, those times would be, done in 15 to 20 minutes for the most time. So I don't necessarily see that. It's completely up to the board how they want to handle that. And a lot of towns don't have their public speaking to the end of the meeting. I do like the fact we have it at the beginning. That gives opportunity if we have a long meeting for the public to speak, so we have the opportunity to listen. I will, just note for whatever it's worth, having a public comment is not required under statutes. It is something towns do because obviously we want to hear from our public. It's only required if you have a public hearing such as land development, quasi-judicial, or a budget that requires a public hearing. Going back to our policy, we have a 3-minute conversation, and CIRSA, our insurance company, has been very clear that those times should not be extended, which we have done in the past because it does open due process issues. So it would be my recommendation to the board that we do stay with the 3-minute public comment section. Individual trustees can always contact members of the public outside of the meeting and have discussions with them and bring items back to the meeting for discussion, or come to the town manager for discussions. How you guys want to handle agenda items, again, usually the town manager, right now the town manager prepares them in conjunction, usually with the mayor, and sometimes they do consult with some trustees on some issues. Then again, if there's something the board wants to take up as a whole, you can have that discussion, such as a meeting today, and vote to put it on the next meeting, which is what we did with the school tax in lieu, or fee in lieu, if you recall. I definitely, your town attorney here, please seek advice from her and ask her thoughts on what she sees across the board. And
One of the suggestions I have from when I worked for Evans is they actually had an agenda item that said future agenda items, so that it could actually be part of the conversation, that then it would go forward to another meeting. But then that way somebody would have the opportunity at that moment to say, hey, I'd like to see this on a future agenda item. Just a,
Sure,
Just
most
a thought.
definitely, and that could be a part of that. And generally under, mayor and trustees report, that would be the section, I would expect you guys to do that as we're having conversations, would be under that section at the beginning.
that'd be a good idea.
But yeah, we could also add, reports and, future issues or discussions.
Good idea.
Mayor, I'm gonna excuse myself for a second too.
That's fine.
Yeah, just a few comments. I mean, I think Paul did a great job of kind of summarizing what other municipalities do. It is really common, that 3-minute limit. I have seen it in some municipalities where they do a public comment period both at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. So the public has, the opportunity to comment at least twice. That certainly could extend your meetings a little bit. I do think it would be beneficial. I mean, currently we have our written policy on the agenda about public comment, but, I think it would be beneficial to the public as a whole to adopt a policy, by resolution, so that, you guys have a better, understanding of what the policy is, and the public does as well, that it could be posted on the town's website as well.
Absolutely.
And I think agenda setting has always been an issue, at least based on my experience with some of the trustees. So to the extent you can get a written policy about how the agenda is set, I think that would all be really beneficial to the town. So if you'd like, us to start working up a policy, we'd be happy to do so and bring it back at a later meeting, based on the direction you give us tonight.
Yeah. I think we do need a policy in place.
Okay. Is everybody okay with kind of the 3-minute policy, like one at the beginning of the meeting?
I think it really helps the town residents to know that they have their voice heard, especially when, we don't always have daily contact. If they don't know our contact information, they can come here in person at those meetings to be able to at least explain what's on their mind. So I think it is important to continue to have that 3 minutes. And I like the idea of having that add on. So if we could add that to our format, that way it's secured in there so that individuals know that their topic is going to be discussed. I think that's really important.
It helps people coming up here knowing it better prepare themselves to ask their questions
Sure.
more efficiently when they come up.
Sure, yeah. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
All right, yeah, we can start working on a policy and bring it back towards the beginning of the year for you guys to take a look at based on some of these other examples.
That'll work.
Thank
Did
you.
I miss anything?
Everything else, yeah, yep.
Yeah. And Mayor and trustees, I do have some other priority ordinance and land development code stuff and things that I do need Melinda to work on before the end of the year. She said the beginning of the year, so, be patient. It may be into, February or March meeting before we get to that, because there are a lot of things we gotta kind of work through up there. Okay. And otherwise, we'll keep with the same policy we've currently been using.
Okay.
Melinda, would it be help until then that we just basically ratify our general policy, keep the 3-minute limit, and the board votes on something that goes on the agenda, so it's just kind of clear going
Sure,
forward?
yeah, that might be beneficial.
Would you guys like
yeah.
to do that, so
Mhm.
just it's clear to everybody of what we have?
Mhm.
So I could say that if someone wants to say a motion so made or something like that, it probably would work. Where we're at right now is that the town will allow 3-minute public comment. During that public comment, we will not interrupt speakers and obviously treat them with respect. And back and forth comment should be limited. If items would like to be placed on future agendas, the boards can bring them up during the mayor and trustee discussion, and there could be a brief discussion from the board members and a vote taken if that's something they would like on another agenda or the future agenda item. So, does that kind of cover it? So if someone wants to go so moved.
So moved.
Second,
Couldn't
yeah.
remember all that.
And a second?
Second?
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. Everybody heard the motion? Because it was so moved. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule.
Yes.
Mark Strickland.
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. So moved. All right, Louis liquor license renewal.
I have, in your packet, I did do a staff report. I have, this is their annual review, which we go through every year. I did check with Sergeant Price, and so weird to say, Sergeant Price.
Oh, I said Ferguson. I'm so sorry. Okay.
They have not had any issues with Louis Liquor, so their application is complete to form, and I suggest that we go ahead and move forward with renewing their application.
You're recommending that we
Yes.
move? Okay.
I move that we move forward with Louis Liquor's application.
I think the motion would be, motion to approve the renewal
sorry.
for Louis Liquor.
I motion to approve the renewal of Louis Liquor.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we approve Louis liquor license renewal. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Okay, Louis liquor license is hereby approved. All right, Stubbs Gas and Oil Incorporated liquor license renewal.
There you go. Once again, I did put a staff report in your packet. Same basic information. I did check with Sergeant Price. There have not been any issues with Stubbs Liquor, and their application is true to form. So I would recommend that you approve and move forward with the license for Stubbs.
I make a motion to approve the license renewal for Stubbs Gas and Oil for a liquor license.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we approve the liquor license for Stubbs Gas and Oil for the renewal. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes, Stubbs Gas and Oil liquor license renewal is hereby approved. Okay, resolutions and ordinances. First item is a recall election. Resolution number 13-2019. A resolution ordering a recall election to be held as part of the regular municipal election on April 7th, 2020 concerning the petition to recall Jeffrey Palmer from the office of trustee of the Wiggins Board of Trustees.
So, Mayor and Trustees, I'm going to allow our clerk, Pat and Melinda, kind of go over what you're preparing and doing, and Pat will kind of give a general description of the recall and what occurred. Then Melinda will address, the legal responsibilities you have under for the board as under the revised statutes. But real quick before they do that, I've been getting some calls, and it's all second, third hand, about some people that were either on the petition or involved in the recall have been kind of receiving some phone calls and or some harassment from some members of the public. And I just briefly, real quick, want to remind everybody that our voting right is a very sacred right we have in this country, and everybody has a right to speak, and we speak with our votes, and that's our voice. And in Colorado, under the municipal election code, and there's actually an offense that is a misdemeanor for intimidating voters, doing anything that would suppress their vote or not allowing them to freely exercise their vote and their rights, and also trying to influence people's votes or their signatures that they put on something. So I'm not hearing a lot more of these. I just want to remind everybody, this is just a process that is allowed. It's a statutory process. It's a process that you guys have requirements to act on. And in America, we make our voices heard with our vote and respect that system, even if you disagree with what's being done or how it's being done. Please respect the system that we have in place, because I don't want to get into a situation where we have to start sending things to a prosecutor. We're better than that as a community. So.
Agreed. Okay, Mayor and Trustees, on October 7th, I did receive well, actually, I'll back up there. We did receive the petitions for us to review. Melinda did review those petitions before they were ever returned back to the committee, so to make sure that they were true to form, had all the constitutional information on them that were required, and had the proper amount of signatures and all of that. So not only did I review it, Paul reviewed it, Melinda reviewed it before we gave it back to the committee to be able to go out and start receiving signatures. On October 7th, I received all of those packets back. There were 3 packets because there were 3 people on that committee that were canvassing to get signatures. On October 8th, I had already gone through all of the signatures on that petition. And what that requires is I get a certified list from the county of all the registered voters within the town. I have to verify their name, their address, and they have to sign the form. They have to date it and sign it. There were a few, and I believe on one of the forms that I have in here, we received a total of 90 signatures. 9 of them I did have to disqualify due to improper signage, or they weren't registered to vote. So there were a total of 81 signatures within those petitions. So tonight we're bringing back to you the recall petition sufficiency. It has been approved by form, by registration vote, for everything to be done properly the way it should have been done for this recall to move forward. So now then, this is where it comes back into your lap, and I know Melinda will go over this more thoroughly. What your choice is this evening, it's not a choice on whether or not you want to recall Jeffrey Palmer. This resolution that we will pass tonight is your statutory requirement to set a date for that recall election. Then the community goes forward with if they want to recall or not recall. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was clear here and out there that when you vote yes, it's just voting to set the date, which is required by state statutes.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes.
While I was in campaign process,
Hold on a second.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, let her finish.
okay, go
Oh, no,
ahead.
that's fine. No, Pat did a great job explaining your guys' obligations,
Thank
but
you.
I'm happy to address the statutes.
You might want to go over how that will work on the petition or on the voting registration, because that's what's confusing about the 2 petitions.
And
that will
Melinda,
be
would you
happening.
mind pushing that mic just a little closer to you?
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
not getting a great feed.
Yeah,
There we go.
definitely. Under state statute, the board's next step, as Pat mentioned, is to set the date for the recall election. And what the statute says is that if a recall election is held within 180 days after the date the board receives the certificate of sufficiency, then the recall election has to be held as part of that regular election. Therefore, the resolution before you tonight, so the town will be holding its regular election on April 7th, 2020, which is 146 days from the date the town clerk had submitted the certificate of sufficiency to you. So the resolution before you tonight sets that recall election to be held as part of the regular election. And to address Pat's comment about nomination petitions, under state statute, a nomination petition will be required for candidates to succeed Trustee Palmer should he be recalled. So that will be a separate nomination petition from your guys' regular vacant and open trustee seats. We've set the time frame for submitting petitions, nomination petitions for candidates to succeed Trustee Palmer. Petitions will be available beginning tomorrow, November 14th, which is what's required by state law, and they must be submitted to the town clerk by January 27th, because that's the date that regular nomination petitions need to be submitted. So that's what the resolution provides, and I'm happy to answer any other questions about that process if the board has any.
So just to clarify, there will be 2 petition forms going out. The one available tomorrow will be to replace the position of the recall. That's what will be open tomorrow. Now, the other petition form I don't have to have available until January
7th, I believe it is, yeah.
So there's 2 petitions that will need. Some people will have to run specifically for the position, just like Mark had to do to replace a position. So there's one petition specifically for the recall, and there will be another petition for the open seats that will come available in April. Okay? Does that clear up?
Yeah.
It can be confusing.
And Melinda,
Trust-
for the public, can you also clarify if a person takes out a nomination petition to fill the seat of Trustee Palmer, if he is recalled, are they still allowed to put a application or a petition to be a member for the general election? So, i.e., can they run for both spots?
I believe that they are. That's my interpretation of the law at this moment. I need to do a little more research on it because the statutes aren't particularly clear, but that's currently my interpretation, and I'll provide more guidance on that before the other deadline for trustees. I'll provide an update to Pat so she can let the town and the citizens know about that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Comment? Okay, so I just want to clarify, during my campaign, I definitely made a notice online that I was not a part of this particular recall, and that I just wanted to make it clear that, you know, and I thank you for clarifying that the fact that by voting, that we're voting for the date, not necessarily for the recall itself.
Correct.
So, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That being said, Resolution 13-2019 is on the table.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 13-2019, a resolution ordering the recall election to be held as part of the regular municipal election on April 7th, 2020, concerning the petition to recall Jeffrey Palmer from the office of trustee of the Town of Wiggins Board of Trustees.
Second.
Motion has been made, seconded. Do we approve Resolution 13-2019, a resolution ordering a recall election to be held as part of the regular municipal election on April 7, 2020, concerning the petition to recall Jeffrey Palmer from the office of trustee of the Wiggins Board of Trustees? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Resolution 13-2019 is hereby approved. The second item on the agenda is Central Water Conservation District. A is Resolution 14-2019, a resolution approving an operating agreement with Central Water Conservancy District. B, Resolution 15-2019, a resolution approving 2 easement agreements with Central Water Conservation District. Paul, you have the floor.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Trustees. I invited Mr. Rick Findell, who's the town water attorney, here to present. I also asked him just to spend a few minutes sharing his background and experience in the water arena and the team that we've been working with at LRE, just so members of the public know, and with the new trustee here. And then he's going to quickly review the IGA that's already been approved by the town board. and then discuss the operating agreement. So I'll give the floor to you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you for the
thank you. Good evening. Should we talk about the agreements, or we really want to?
I think it's important to give a little bit of background because I get a lot of comments that we have qualified people working for us. And
I came to work for the town of Wiggins 10 years ago, in 2009. Before I became your water lawyer, we had embarked already on the South Platte Water Project. Wiggins had been subject to an order from the health department to improve the quality of its water supply. The old wells here in the closed basin were high in nitrates and maybe some other things. The town had gone through quite a process of looking at different options for what do we do about it. There were treatment of that groundwater, new wells for that, getting service from Morgan County Quality Water. The town had determined already to pursue the South Platte River wells and augmentation plan, had designed the water treatment plan and pipeline to bring the water into town, was a long way into the process of obtaining USDA funding, and had, by the time I came on board, already purchased the Camera Farm over under the Weldon Valley Ditch and 10 shares of the Weldon Valley Ditch Company. So when I started, we applied for those water rights and what's called a plan for augmentation in 2011. We went through that process, took it through water court, and in basically a 3-year ordeal of dealing with issues in the water court. One of the things that's kind of unique about going to water court as opposed to other kinds of litigation, most of the time if you have a lawsuit, you decide who you're going to sue, and you name a defendant. And in a water court case, we file an application and notice of that is published, and anybody who feels it might be affected is entitled to oppose you. And you wind up with multiple parties in opposition. We had 17 objectors, I think it was, quite a number, and you never know going in exactly how much opposition you're going to have or what the nature of it is going to be. That right there is a large part of the reason why many of the worst mistakes I've made throughout my career as a water lawyer have been in response to the two questions that everybody wants a definite answer to, which is how much will this cost and how long will it take? Those turn out to be difficult questions when you don't know until you get into court how much opposition you have. But we obtained the decree. We had engineering support from Leonard Rice Engineers, and got our decree in February 2014. We had already, before we finished that, embarked on, okay, what's the next phase? What are the next steps we're going to need to expand this and get the right to take more water? We were, the amount of water authorized by our original plan was on the order of 110 acre feet per year, whereas the town's demand was 2 to 3 times that. So it was, well, a third to a half of the supply, and obviously we wanted to shift the whole supply over to that source. In 2013, we embarked on a partnership with a private group called Box Elder Creek Properties. We had 2 contracts with them. We bought some more shares in the Weldon Valley Ditch Company that we use to replace what we take from the town's wells. And we had a separate agreement that was a little more unconventional. More, rather than just buying water from them, we had a literal partnership with them. Box Elder Creek Properties, under that agreement, gave the town of Wiggins 8 additional shares, roughly 100 acre feet per year of water, and agreed to build a recharge project off-site, upstream several miles, in exchange for which Wiggins agreed to provide some of that water back to Box Elder Creek Properties for the benefit of one of their projects elsewhere. We went to water court again and applied to expand our plan
Box Elder Creek Properties went to Water Court with a couple of applications for its plan, and they ran into that problem of how much opposition are you going to get and how difficult is it going to be, and wound up not going through with their plan, and we ultimately had to terminate that agreement. It was effectively an attempt at a public-private partnership to expand the town's water supply at very low cost. That didn't work. We did, however, go forward with the portion of expanding the town's plan with the shares that we had purchased. Those we owned. We didn't. We had to basically give back the other 8 shares, undo the deal with the upstream landowner for that recharge pond, and unwind ourselves from Box Elder Creek Properties. But we did complete the expansion of the town's water rights in that 2014 application. Again, it was a 2 to 3 year process of going through that. And we got the 3-year process, got that decree in July 2017. We are still looking at ways to expand and improve the operations of the town's plan. Some additional recharge projects will help us expand the amount of water that the town can take and keep up with growth in the town. The town, as I'm sure everybody here knows, has purchased additional water rights in the Fort Morgan Reservoir and Irrigation Company, and the farm on which that water was used, has purchased the Knievel property for the wastewater treatment plant, and other uses. And one of the uses we're going to make out there is to additional recharge. We'll have water that we can take from the town's Weldon Valley supplies and under the new water rights that we'll apply for, and put it into recharge so that it slowly comes back to the river and offsets the diversions that the town makes through its wells. In doing that, we have continued to have support from the engineers at Leonard Rice Engineers. We have different people there now. They did have, in 2013, I think, some of the people that we had been working with had left the company, and we've been well served in the time since then by Andrew Case and Stephanie Luce, 2 younger engineers that are coming along and have done a nice job for us at the town of Wiggins, and continue to do so in the projects that we're working on. In looking at the Knievel recharge project in particular, we had a couple of options of how to proceed. It could very well be done as a standalone project where the town of Wiggins builds all the necessary facilities. There are, as it turns out, in the area where we're going to do this, at least 3 other parties that are doing similar things, doing diversions out of the river, running the water up a pipeline into recharge so that it slowly trickles back to the river. Those include Blue Wing Farms, and Mr. Rao, is that his name? Who's been here a few times, I believe, to address you, has a similar project very close by. Orphan Wells of Wiggins has a similar project very close by. Some of their ponds are near where the town's going to build ours. And the Central Colorado Water Conservancy District is also building a fairly large project that will run water very near to, and actually their plans have always included putting ponds on the Knievel parcel. So the agreement that you approved before are what we call the IGA, the Intergovernmental Agreement with the Central Colorado Water Conservancy District, outlined the basics of a cooperative plan to basically for Wiggins to participate in Central's project, to share facilities, to share pumps and pipelines. They propose 15 or 20 different recharge ponds, including 3 that are on the town's land, the Knievel parcel. We're proposing 3 that are on the town's land, and under that agreement, we will have wells that Central will finance and build and install. We will share the capacity of a portion of the capacity of Central's pipeline at considerable savings as compared to building one for ourselves. And in return, we have a couple of the items that are on the agenda tonight. The intergovernmental agreement had the basics of how we will cooperatively construct and operate and finance the project that we're going to share. Tonight we have one of the agreements is what we're calling the operating agreement, which is a more detailed allocation of who does what and how we will work together to operate those facilities. Together with that, the second resolution has granting of 2 easements for to the Central Colorado Water Conservancy District for the project that is for our mutual benefit. The first easement is basically a right to lay that pipeline that we're going to share from the diversion at the river to the recharge ponds. It will cross the water treatment plant parcel out on Highway 144. There's some drawings here that we're passing around that show the boundaries of a 50-foot wide easement for that pipeline that we will share with Central.
Are these all the same?
They're all the same. Yeah,
Oh,
these
Take
are
one
all.
and pass. Yep, sorry.
Yep, take one and pass the rest.
All right, I realize they're
And some additional 100. It's a 50-foot wide easement for the pipeline with a temporary 100-foot wide easement, basically making it that much wider for the period of construction. So, and that will take the common pipeline across the water treatment plant parcel. As you can see in the drawing, it makes a turn on the town's property and heads off to the east. The second easement is to allow Central to build recharge ponds at the other end of that pipe on the Knievel farm. There's plenty of room out there for the town to build its ponds and for Central to build its ponds. As part of the cost sharing, the value of those easements for the ponds on the Knievel property are part of Wiggins' contribution to the cost of the project. So it offset, what was it, $170,000 of costs of Wiggins' share of the cost of the joint facilities. So Wiggins will be paying Central the cost of constructing either 2 or 3 wells, depending on how much they produce. And it will be a pipeline with a capacity of the cost of the pipeline. There's some shared facilities pertinent to those. And then once the pipeline comes onto the Knievel parcel, the water will be split and measured. Wiggins' water goes this way, Central's water goes that way. And as I mentioned, the easement agreements or the operating agreement and the IGA recognize the value of the easements that we are proposing to convey to Central tonight as part of Wiggins' contribution to the cost of the project. So there's some non-cash contribution. So those are the things that are on the agenda. I know you've heard some members of the board at least have heard from members of the community that, why are we doing this with Central? Why aren't we doing this with Mr. Rao's project or the OWW project? And largely, the reason why we recommend proceeding with Central is we've just come out of a not so great experience in partnering with a private entity for a public project. The fact of contracting with a government rather than a private party or a group of private parties allows greater financial stability and capacity. They will always be there. They don't have a profit motive. They don't have the likelihood of going away when the next generation takes over the farm. The Central Colorado Water Conservancy District will always be there, will always be, we think, a reliable partner, and opens up the possibility for perhaps other cooperative projects in the future. So, having approved the IGA before, the operating agreement and these two easements are the next steps in furthering our partnership with the, I believe your resolution says Central Water Conservancy, it is the Central Colorado Water Conservancy District.
Is that how it has to be worded?
Central
Yes.
Colorado.
Central Colorado.
Yep. And just a couple little things on the operation of the project. Currently within the operating agreement, Central will operate the system, and when there's a need for water, we're ready to put water into our ponds. When there's no calls on the river, we will notify Central 24 hours ahead of time. They'll control the SCADA system. They'll turn our wells on that we're responsible for. Once the water gets to our ponds, we're responsible from it after the split, so to take care of the ponds and the meters within that. We obviously will have to pay our operating costs for running electricity and also for depreciation on the system and the pipe, and that's built into the agreement. And do you remember what that number is? Did we end up with $35 or acre foot, or do you remember off the top of your head?
We ended up with
An
get an
actual
accounting each year for actual costs.
cost.
And the actual costs of operating the wells that will provide Wiggins' share of the water, and a pro rata portion of the cost of the pipeline. Pipeline costs usually aren't very much until the day 50 years out when you have to replace things. Central will have what's called a SCADA system, basically the ability to open up your computer and look at how much is being pumped out of the wells right now, and Wiggins will have that data and information and connection into the SCADA system, so that we can do the reporting that we're required to do for under our water rights to the state and others. The finances included an annual contribution into basically what I call a sinking fund, if that's the right term.
A reserve account.
A reserve account that Central will maintain, because wells and pumps and things are, of course, mechanical devices that wear out and have a finite life, and will need to be replaced. So there's a $25,000 per year contribution into a fund that Central will hold in a separate account for the town of Wiggins, so that when a pump or motor needs to be replaced, hopefully that's 12 to 15 years out, not 7 or 8, but sometimes it is, then there will be less of a shock to your budget when it happens, because we'll have prepaid into that reserve account for exactly that purpose. While Central will maintain the account and hold the money, they will use the money when Wiggins tells them to, and that's what's set out in the operating agreement. So if we get to a point where there's a bill for replacement and the town feels like, okay, we have adequate money, we don't need to use the reserves, we can just pay our share and keep our reserve account, or when there are extraordinary expenses, we can direct Central to take money out of the Wiggins reserve account and pay Wiggins' share of those expenses.
And the whole goal was to really minimize staff. That town of Wiggins would have to provide staff to make the system run, just with our limited staff we have. So basically, we are paying a part of pro rata share of Central staff to run the system, operate the system. They will do the repairs to the system. So Wiggins' responsibilities will be at the farm where the water comes out, and so that does help us. As you know, we're very limited staff, so from running back and forth and operating the system.
These facilities are not yet included in the town's decreed water rights in our augmentation plan. We will be required to file an application to get approval to add these facilities into and the recharge project into the town's plan. We are working on that. I have a draft of that the engineers are looking at. They're actually focusing on the Fort Morgan application first as their first priority. One that is the separate additional case that we will need to pursue in the coming months. So they're working on the Fort Morgan one first. This one will follow, but I would hope in the next month or 2 or 3 we get we'll have both of those applications underway for approval to expand the ability to take water from the town's wells.
So I have a question. I thought while I was reading through it, which I can't find right at the moment, that there was an emergency draw clause for if we have like a high demand, say like a large fire, where we need some extra water, possibly from another source. Is that something that could be considered, or is that not something that would be a part of that system?
Oh, I think what we were talking about, or within that contract, you saw.
Within this contract,
We had anything like that, didn't we?
I thought there was something in here. It talked about.
Emergency pumping, we were talking about emergency repairs to this system.
Yeah.
This really just
Deals with the
addresses
system.
what happens if something has to be done right away for repair or replacement of the shared system.
Yeah, so there's
Right,
a break in
okay.
the pipe and, fuse flooding, what do we do?
But as far as like if we needed extra flow, or to be able to get more than
Oh,
what the
more than
agreement-
the 10 CFS?
Correct.
And honestly, I don't think the scenario would rise where we would ever need that
Need to
facility,
go
because
that
our
way.
ponds probably won't be able to handle more than what we have in, but
We would need to take.
Oh, so that's going
if we have
directly to the
emer-
ponds then?
This is going
directly to
direct
the ponds.
Oh,
This
so
is
it's the other-
augmentation water.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and we don't
we're
foresee
not
a
connected to that.
scenario where that would
I
be
see.
used in an emergency. That would come from the town's own wells, the ones from which we're replacing.
So is there any plan to connect to that in the future?
It's a non-potable system. This is not treated water, so we would not be bringing it into town.
Okay.
This is only to, basically, if we want to increase what we bring into town, we have to replace that water back to the river. This expands our capacity to make replacement.
Right. Okay.
So when you took the tour, we visit the Camera Farm where we get the water from the Weldon Valley ditch and we put it into the augmentation ponds.
Right.
Then it allows us to pump. This is the same scenario, but instead of the water coming from the ditch, it's actually coming from a well near the river.
Okay.
And so we're pumping it up and retiming it so it slowly works down the river, which allows us to pump more water out of our potable wells.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what you have before you for approval this evening are the 2 resolutions, one to approve the operating agreement with the Central Colorado Water Conservancy District, one to approve the granting of the 2 easements to Central, and we on staff recommend you approve them.
Okay.
And the system is already under construction, just FYI. They have crossed the town's potable water line, which we allowed them to lower to get their system done. So that was completed, and they're actually installing parts of the line. They're almost up to where they need our easement across our RO system. So they are moving. So we probably could have the ability to have water this fall, possibly. As I think is what they were shooting for, weren't they?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So we can be online quickly.
Good deal.
Fall of 2020?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, fall of 2020. Yes.
Awesome.
Now, is that Central Water Colorado?
Central Colorado Water Conservancy District.
I move that we approve Central Colorado Water Conservancy District A and B Resolution 14/2019, a resolution approving an operating agreement with Central Water Conservancy District and
I'll stop you right there. Let's do one at a time.
okay, apologize. I just
No, you're fine.
it was A and B on there.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded that we approve the Central Colorado Water Conservancy District Resolution 14/2019, a resolution approving the operating agreement with Central Water
Yes.
Central Colorado Water Conservation District. Is there any further discussion?
Can we pause 1 second?
Yes, I'm sorry, I do have one thing to add that I did leave out. This, what you have in front of you may not be exactly the final version, since we were hoping to get one back from Central this week. So we would ask that you allow Paul some discretion to finalize the language and approve the agreements in substantially the form as are presented tonight.
And Melinda did have that language in the resolution.
If it's in
yeah,
there
I
already,
just saw
that's
it, so-
way to go,
so, yeah,
Melinda.
so we're bringing that.
Well
to-
done.
We're bringing
It's-
that to your attention.
That is in there, and they're, so they're, we are still waiting for Central's last comments. All of them, that we've sent to them, we haven't had any pushback. This has been a very cooperative process. It's, we're not gonna change large things about, it'll be details and operating and making things consistent and moving commas into the right places and that sort of thing.
Lawyer lingo.
So, are we okay with that motion, or was it?
The resolution as approved already includes that
Okay.
it would be substantially in the form. Thank you, Melinda.
I already have a first and a second. I already have a first and a second.
Okay, roll call, please.
There you go. Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland.
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Resolution 14-2019 is hereby approved. Okay, resolution 15-2019, a resolution approving 2 easement agreements with Central Colorado Water Conservation District. There you go. You can run with it now.
I move that we approve resolution 15-2019, a resolution approving 2 easement agreements with Central Water Conservancy District,
Central.
Second.
or Central Colorado.
Okay.
I didn't add Colorado in there.
And the second?
Yes.
Any
Mark.
further discussion? Roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes, resolution 15-2019 is hereby approved.
Thank you.
Okay. We're good to go then.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
He's gonna stick around for executive.
Okay,
Real
good
quick.
deal.
There's a couple things to go
All right. Next item on the agenda is the Roberts 81 2020 budget and operating plan. This is resolution 16-2019, a resolution approving the 2020 operating plan and budget for the Roberts 81 Business Improvement District.
You want
Me
it?
to do it?
Sure.
Mayor and trustees, last year, if you recall, you approved the organization of the Roberts 81 Business Improvement District, which is a special district that operates within the Roberts 81 acres of property. State law requires that the BID, file its operating plan and proposed budget with the board each year, and that the board approve or deny it. The district has filed their operating plan and budget, and there are no changes from the operating plan and budget that you approved last year. Therefore, it's our recommendation that you go ahead and approve those documents. And if you have any questions, certainly let me know.
You got any questions on it, Mark?
I honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of time to be able to go over that.
Sure.
So I'd like to have more time to be able to take a look at that information.
Sure. Yeah, I think that'll be okay. Well, I'm sorry.
No,
Under state
it does have to
statute,
be approved at
it
this
has
level.
to be approved before December 5th.
Oh, before December 5th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, and just for clarifying that what the Business Improvement District is, the BID, it's a quasi judicial, basically. It's a taxing district that is set up to kind of run independently, but it just runs under the control of the board. So generally, we're just making sure that everything within it is following the state statutes and it's in accordance with the agreement that was passed. So you're not really making changes to the BID or do anything. You're just making sure that is within accordance with state statute. And I didn't thoroughly read it either, and because the town attorney looked it over and make the recommendation. So it's nothing you can really make a motion to change to. I mean, you could deny it if you saw a statutory issue or something along that line, but it's really a procedural thing that's being done tonight.
Okay.
And it would be okay if you don't feel comfortable. I think you could abstain from the
I don't
votes,
feel comfortable.
and
I'd
there's
like-
still enough votes here to do that, so that would be fine.
Yeah. So I will abstain.
All right, well, when she asks you, you let her know.
Okay.
Okay.
I need a motion and a
Yes, I
second.
was gonna say, we need a motion.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 16-2019, resolution approving the 2020 operating plan and budget for the Roberts 81 Business Improvement District.
Second.
Motion has been made, seconded, we approve resolution 16-2019, a resolution approving the 2020 operating plan and budget for the Roberts 81 Business Improvement District. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Abstain.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes.
Motion passes 3 with the majority of 3.
Okay, resolution 16-2019 is hereby approved. Okay. 4, Personnel Policy Handbook. This is Resolution 17-2019, a resolution adopting amendments to the Wiggins Personnel Policy Handbook and the Police Department Policy and Procedure Manual.
So, so Mayor and Trustees, this is one of the things just kind of in conversations with Pat and kind of seeing some of the needs of staff. We have come to recognize that not all of the staff need or want the insurance policy that the town offers. And right now, how it's set up, the town pays for a health insurance policy. Roughly, I think this year is going to be about $845, $75, something like that per employee. However, under our insurance plan, they have the option of 2 other policies that are a little bit less benefits, such as a higher deductible and higher copays and things along that line. And there's about a $200, $250 savings from the top plan to the bottom plan that they could select. Some employees do have some other options for some other plans, and they would like to utilize, their spouse's plans or something like that. So what this proposes is that if an employee selects a lesser plan than what you have budgeted for, that at the end of the year, the town could rebate the employee the difference of that amount. So the town's not out any money out of pocket, but it does give the benefit to the employee. Employees will still be required, because our insurance companies require that they have health insurance through them, with the exception if they're on at the age where they can reach Medicare, and then they can opt out of the system. So under that scenario, basically, if that employee proves that they have insurance through Medicare, then they can have the rebate of that plan. Otherwise, it will just be about $200 a month, $200-something a month for each employee. So we're just trying to make it a little financially better for employees that really don't need to access the plan. The second one, under section 2, is just a clarification of the policy. It already, looking back at our town's personnel policy, it's already pretty clear when the town adopted the personnel policy handbook in 2017. It overrid basically all other policies. It states that within the handbook. However, there's been a little bit of confusion because the police policy handbook has a different amount of holiday pay days that an employee gets versus what the personnel policy handbook gets. It's actually more, but the intent of the personnel policy handbook obviously was always to be applied to all employees, including the police department. So we're just putting that in there for clarification, so there's no misunderstanding, and it's just not coming from Paul and the town attorney. Yeah, I would recommend approval for that for our town employees.
Well, I move that we approve resolution 17-2019, a resolution adopting amendments to the Wiggins Personnel Policy Handbook and the Police Department Policy and Procedure Manual.
Second.
Motion has been made, seconded, we approve resolution 17-2019, a resolution adopting amendments to the Wiggins Personnel Policy Handbook and the Police Department Policy and Procedure Manual. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Resolution 17-2019 is hereby approved. Okay. The last item or the next item on the agenda is executive session.
And Mayor, are you using the paper copy?
Yes.
Okay, paper copy has a little bit of a different than what the computer has.
Okay. All right, let me read out the executive session portion of it. The executive session for the following purpose: for a conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS section 24-6-402 subsection 4B, and for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators under CRS section 24-6-402, 4E, school district IGA, town manager, legal advice contracts, and legal advice trustee code of conduct. So we will need a motion to go into executive session.
Do we need to read that?
I make a motion to go into executive session for legal advice and contract. Do I need to read the whole? Okay.
No?
The fact that you've said it already
Okay.
is,
Okay.
I get to read it
sufficient.
again. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion has been made, seconded. We go into executive session for legal advice and contract. Any further discussion? Who will all be going into this executive session? Everybody at the table with the exception of
Pat,
Pat?
yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right. Roll call, please.
Chris Sandoval,
Yes.
Charles Rule,
Yes.
Mark Strickland,
Yes.
Mayor McLeon.
Yes. Executive session for legal advice and contract is hereby approved. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute recess so that we can get